Chapter 1548 Blood Demon World. Chapter 1548 Blood Demon World. Blood Demon World in Jianghu Holy Kingdom. Blood Demon World was made of a dozen worlds and it had a vast territory. Blood Demon Church was the overlord of Blood Demon World, the true local tyrant. Blood Demon Church could also be considered a strong force, even within Jianghu Holy Kingdom. Blood Demon World was one of the many worlds. In a pavilion in an ordinary city, a man and a woman sat together. The man was a middle-aged man in loose, long robe while the woman was a beauty in a white robe. From their behavior they should be husband and wife. Husband, it has been 3 days, why hasn't Protector Jian arrived? The beauty in a white robe creased her eyebrows. Don't worry. Protector Jian already messaged me. He will be here soon, the middle-aged man said. I feel that Protector Jian isn't reliable. He is from Blood Demon Church after all. The people from Blood Demon Church are all demons. The beauty in a white robe looked concerned. Shoo, the middle-aged man signaled her to keep quiet and he said, it's okay if you say that elsewhere but in Blood Demon World, don't speak recklessly. Otherwise we might be killed. The beauty in a white robe felt her heart skip a beat. Actually, I know that there's a risk asking for help from experts in Blood Demon Church. But we have no choice. Only they can help us with the trouble we're having. Otherwise, the middle-aged man sighed and felt helpless too. If it wasn't because he had no choice, he wouldn't get involved with anyone in Blood Demon Church. Then, a few figures walked into the pavilion at the same time. The one walking at the front was a blonde, brawny elderly. Both the middle-aged man and the beauty in a white robe stood up simultaneously as they saw the people. Protector Jian, the middle-aged man greeted with a smile. The blonde, brawny elderly who walked in the pavilion glanced at the middle-aged man and he looked calm. But when he saw the beauty in a white robe behind him, there was a change in his expression and there was a strange look in his eyes. Haha, Universe God Qi, right? Come, let's sit and discuss. The blonde, brawny elderly Protector Jian smiled as the three of them sat by the table. Then the middle-aged man poured some wine. Protector Jian, sorry to trouble you to get involved personally. My wife and I shall raise our glasses in a toast. The middle-aged man, Universe God Qi, raised his glass. You're welcome. Protector Jian smiled as he looked towards the beauty in a white robe. After chugging the wine, Protector Jian said, Universe God Qi, the favor that you asked for is quite troublesome. Even I have to spend some time and effort to take care of it. If you really want to resolve this, you have to show some sincerity. With the agreed price, it might not be enough. Not enough. Universe God Qi creased his eyebrows. Actually, the price he had paid was already very high, but he was well prepared as Protector Jian was a man in Blood Demon Church. I wonder what else Protector Jian needs. I will prepare for you immediately, Universe God Qi replied. You don't have to prepare anything. The thing that I want, you have it right now, Protector Jian said. Oh. Universe God Qi looked confused. Actually, it's nothing major. I'd like your wife to serve me for a while. Not long, maybe about 100 or 200 years will do, Protector Jian said casually. What? Universe God Qi's face suddenly grew grave. The beauty in a white robe next to him was terrified too. Protector Jian, your joke is not funny at all. Universe God Qi had already stood up, anger raging in his eyes. I don't have the time to make a joke with you. Protector Jian's face grew cold too. Your wife has to serve me for 200 years. Otherwise I will not help you. Humph, you will not help. There will be other people who are willing to help. Junair, let's go. Universe God Qi pulled the beauty in a white robe by her arm and wanted to leave. Hold on, Protector Jian smirked coldly. Although the deal didn't go through, I can't be making a trip for nothing, right? How about this? The price that you offered previously, forget about it. But your wife has to stay. Protector Jian, don't go overboard. Universe God Qi and the beauty in a white robe was angry. Overboard? Ah, this is Blood Demon World and Blood Demon Church rules here. I can do whatever I like. Who can do anything to me? You should blame your wife for being so enchanting that I can't stand the temptation. Protector Jian scoffed as he stood up. Brothers, go and catch the beauty for me. When I'm done with her, all of you can take turns for her to serve you. Haha, thank you, Protector Jian. The few universe gods who stood at the side looked excited. Their burning gazes fixed onto the beauty in a white robe. Bastard. Universe God Qi was angry and his aura suddenly soared. This annoying Universe God Qi, just kill him. The few universe gods from Blood Demon Church had a sudden murderous intention and, a massacre was suddenly induced. The exquisite pavilion instantly broke into parts from the impact of divine power. Universe god Qi and the other few people's figures instantly soared up in the void above the city, and they startled the cultivators in the entire city. Husband. The beauty in a white robe had a green sword in her hand as she rushed onto the battlefield. However, although the couple were universe gods in the second heaven, their opponents were 5 universe gods in the second heaven. Plus, there was Protector Jian, who was a universe god in the third heaven, watching by the side. Humph, just a universe god in the second heaven, and he wants to counterattack. Protector Jian smirked in disdain, and he fixed his gaze on the beauty in a white robe. Don't hurt my beauty. I have to take good care of her. With a malicious smile, Protector Jian moved and appeared behind the beauty in a white robe. He extended his hand to grab her shoulder. Husband. The beauty in a white robe was frightened and went as pale as a sheet. You evil Jian. Universe god Qi let out a shrill roar that shook the heavens and earth. Just as Protector Jian's palm reached for the beauty in a white robe's shoulder, vroom. A shapeless force suddenly soared over from nowhere, and Protector Jian's smile immediately stiffened. The few experts from Blood Demon Church who were besieging universe god Qi looked terrified too. The next moment, the few persons' gazes grew dim and their bodies fell helplessly. That sight shocked all the cultivators in the city who were watching the battle. In the void, universe god Qi and the beauty in white robe were shocked at the sight. Chapter 1549, Elder Shuiyang. Chapter 1549, Elder Shuiyang. My husband, what happened to them? The white-robed beautiful woman questioned shockingly. It's an expert. An expert has acted secretly to help us. Universe god Qi was looking at the void around him. However, he did not manage to find the origin of that power. No matter who helped us, both of us are extremely grateful. Universe god Qi bowed down to the void around him. After that, he pulled his wife's hand and left immediately. The city then went into a complete uproar. A protector of the Blood Demon Church had died within the city, and this was a big matter. Moreover, the most important thing was that it was unknown who the protector was killed by or how he was killed. Many cultivators from the city had started to find the mysterious expert who attacked the protector. However, they were unable to find him. At the very next moment, just opposite the void where the fight had broken out between universe god Qi and the protector, 2 figures were sitting down on a spot near the window in a pub. Jian Wushuang, didn't Hall Master Yuan of the lineage of Star remind you many times not to act unless you have absolutely no choice? Why did you act in the end? The fiery king who had scarlet hair, scarlet eyebrows and even a scarlet beard looked at Jian Wushuang while laughing and holding a wine cup. I have already checked. Although there are quite a number of cultivators in this city, the strongest person is only a normal universe god of the third heaven. Hence, no one will be able to tell that I am the one who did it, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Even if that's the case, we must still be careful. As the fiery king spoke, he exclaimed in admiration soon after. However, the Blood Demon Church's people's way of doing things is really unreasonable. They were actually snatching other people's wives without any restraint in front of so many cultivators in the city. It is no wonder that the cultivators of the Blood Demon Church would say that the Blood Demon Church's people are all demons. Looking at it now, that seems to be the case. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Back then, by just hearing the name, he could tell that the Blood Demon Church was not a decent powerhouse. After coming to the Blood Demon world for real, he realized that the Blood Demon Church was even more evil than he had expected. For example, a small matter like snatching other people's wives could make the Blood Demon Church's people start killing people. The Blood Demon Church still had some small powerhouses and sections. On ordinary days, as soon as they disrespected the Blood Demon Church even the slightest bit, the Blood Demon Church would destroy the sect straight away or even destroy their clan. All in all, the Blood Demon Church was the overlord of the Blood Demon world. Such a powerhouse actually existed for so many years in the world. Yet, no experts acted to destroy it, the fiery king muttered. If the Blood Demon Church dared to do such things within the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, they would have been destroyed many times. However, this place is only a holy kingdom. Hence, the Blood Demon Church is considered a top powerhouse. As long as one is not stupid enough to provoke real God Jiogong, he would not be killed, Jian Wushuang said. However, his mind was filled with worries. After all, there was a high possibility that Leng Ruxue was inside the Blood Demon Church. Jian Wushuang, what do we do now? The fiery king looked over. Let's go somewhere near the Blood Demon Church's base. I have to first confirm whether the person I'm looking for is there, Jian Wushuang said. In no time Jian Wushuang and the Fiery King set off. The Blood Demon Church's base was within one of the regions of the Blood Demon Church. When Jian Wushuang stepped into this region, Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat and he took out a token immediately. It was a special golden token and it was given to him by Emperor Tang after his marriage with Leng Wushuang in the Green Fire world back then. Back then, when Leng Wushuang's consciousness was about to go into a deep sleep, Emperor Tang had intentionally left a seal inside her consciousness. Unless Leng Wushuang's consciousness woke up and she went to erase the seal herself, it would be impossible to erase the seal even if Leng Wushuang was controlling the body and had her abilities rise to a very high level. As for the golden token, it could sense the existence of that seal. When Jian Wushuang appeared in the region where the Blood Demon Church was in that very moment, the golden token had a reaction. As expected, it's her. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and he was extremely excited. Previously, although he obtained the news from the Vientiane Tower, be it the Vientiane Tower or him, they were unable to confirm if the person within the base of the Blood Demon Church was actually Leng Wushuang. However, at that very moment Jian Wushuang could confirm. Shuanger, I have finally found you. Please wait a while longer. In no time, I will get your consciousness to wake up and let you control your own body again. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. Of course, before that, he still needed to be sure of the true abilities of the Blood Demon Church. As a powerful overlord within the Jianghu Holy Kingdom, the Blood Demon Church had quite a number of experts. Among them, those who stood at the highest level were naturally the few real gods, and below them were a few elders who were peak universe gods of the third heaven. Among those elders, one of them was Elder Shuiyang. Elder Shuiyang had come from a normal region within the Jianghu Holy Kingdom originally. Moreover, when he was small and weak, he had been chased around by strong enemies. As such, he had escaped to the outside world and roamed about everywhere. After that, as he had no choice, he went to the Blood Demon world and joined the Blood Demon Church with an identity as a universe god of the first heaven. With the help and the resources within the Blood Demon Church, his abilities grew continuously and he became an elder of the Blood Demon Church in the end. When he became an elder, he lived his life comfortably. In the Blood Demon world, one could run wild willfully. When many weak forces in the Blood Demon world were facing him, they trembled in fear and were extremely terrified of him as they were scared that they might have offended him. Everywhere he went, people would bow to him and try to win his favor. As soon as ignorant people provoked him, he would not need to act personally. Instead, by giving an order, on the second day that person, the sect that he was in, his loved ones and good friends, would all be killed. Thus, it could be said that within the Blood Demon world, one sentence of his could decide the fate of many people. Elder Shuiyang also enjoyed the power and influence that he possessed. However, at that very moment, his good days were about to come to an end. Who are the both of you? Elder Shuiyang's eyes were filled with a bit of fear as he looked at the two people who had appeared in front of him all of a sudden. For the two people, one of them was carrying a long sword while the body of the other person was like fire. Moreover, either one of them could give him, a peak universe god of the third heaven, pressure that he never experienced before. The pressure that he experienced was even greater than the pressure he had felt whilst facing the few real gods within the Blood Demon Church. I wish to ask you something. You had better answer it truthfully. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold and he was staring at Elder Shuiyang. I will do my best. Elder Shuiyang's throat was trembling. I know that you are an elder of the Blood Demon Church, which is considered quite a high position within the Blood Demon Church. Therefore, you should know some of the matters within the Blood Demon Church. Let me ask you. How many real gods does the Blood Demon Church have and how strong are they? Jian Wushuang's low voice echoed in the ears of Elder Shuiyang. Chapter 1553 Stages of Real God. Chapter 1550. 3 Stages of Real God. The two of them are aiming at Blood Demon Church. Elder Shuiyang felt terrified, but he didn't reply to Jian Wushuang's question instantly. He knew clearly how brutal Blood Demon Church's conduct was. If he were to expose the privacy of the internal Blood Demon Church and they were to find out, he would definitely end miserably. What? You're not willing to? Fiery King glanced at Elder Shuiyang. It seems like you will have to suffer for a bit. Elder Shuiyang, Jian Wushuang suddenly spoke. Elder Shuiyang looked at Jian Wushuang subconsciously and was immediately attracted by the glaring crimson light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The crimson light was like a scarlet sun that was extremely eye-catching. 18 Azura hell instantly descended. No, no. Elder Shuiyang instantly gave out a blood-curdling scream. He fell into the dreamland and was unable to free himself from it. With Jian Wushuang's current soul strength, it was close to a real god's dreamland when he performed 18 Azura hell with his all, and it was extremely torturous to one's body and mind. Although Elder Shuiyang was a peak universe god in the third heaven, he couldn't endure the terrifying torture of 18 Azura hell. Elder Shuiyang's eyes were bloodshot and his face was distorted in agony. He looked extremely ferocious. The entire heaven and earth was drowned in his shrill scream. Luckily, before Jian Wushuang had pulled him into dreamland, Fiery King had already set up a layer of restraint at the surrounding void. Hence, the scream never spread and there was no communication allowed. Very soon, Elder Shuiyang walked through each kind of torture in the dreamland and it slowly dispersed. Elder Shuiyang looked exhausted as he collapsed on the ground. However, there was still an unprecedented fear on his face. Elder Shuiyang, the earlier dreamland, do you want to experience it again? Jian Wushuang glared at Elder Shuiyang and said coldly, don't be in a hurry. We have time. The earlier phantasmagoria, if you are willing to, we can do it 10 times or 100 times. 10 times? 100 times. Just one time could make Elder Shuiyang close to going mad. No, I'll tell you everything. Elder Shuiyang shook his head and shouted. Jian Wushuang and Fiery King smirked coldly at his reply. Jian Wushuang, your torturing measure is really impressive. Fiery King couldn't hold back his compliments. In terms of power, Fiery King might be stronger by one notch. However, in terms of torturing measure, Jian Wushuang, who was a universe god good at soul attacks, was much more skillful than Fiery King. When he performed 18 Azura hell with his all, forget about Elder Shuiyang, even an ordinary real god might not be able to withstand it. Tell me, in Blood Demon Church, how many real gods are there in total? Jian Wushuang inquired. There's a total of 4. There are 3 first-stage void real god and the other one is the founder of Blood Demon Church who is a real god who already reached the 2nd stage. Elder Shuiyang didn't dare to hide. 2nd stage. Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted. Eternal real god? Fiery King's face grew solemn. In Eternal Chaotic World there were 3 stages for a real god. The first stage was Void Real God, which was the most ordinary king. In 10 cultivation sanctuaries, some weaker sects were appendage to real gods of that stage. For instance, 7-Planet Palace Master who Jian Wushuang had once suppressed, the real gods that were imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, including Fiery God, Blood Emperor, Heartless King and so on, they were all in that stage. However, Fiery King was considered at the peak of Void Real God. The 2nd stage of Real God was Eternal Real God. Real gods at this stage were much rarer than the first stage Void Real Gods. Even within 10 cultivation sanctuaries, if an Eternal Real God were willing, he could easily start a force or sect. For instance, most of the Deacon Elderlies were Eternal Real God. As for the 3rd stage of Real God, it was known as Chaotic Real God. Those were real gods at the peak. There were very few real gods of that stage. Even a force like Lineage of Star had very few chaotic real gods. Of course, the bunch of chaotic real god at the peak were listed on the real god ranking list. Their fighting power was extremely strong. Like Lei Chao, he was one of the chaotic real god listed on real god ranking list. For the 3 stages of real god, every stage marks a vast difference. The eternal real god in Blood Demon Church is much scarier than the 3 void real gods team up, Fiery God explained. Besides the 4, is there any other experts in Blood Demon Church? I'm referring to the kind that is always in seclusion and hardly reveal themselves normally, Jian Wushuang continued to ask. I really have no idea. Elder Shuiyang shook his head and said pathetically, Mister, although I am an elderly in Blood Demon Church, there are about 20 elderlies like myself in Blood Demon Church. We are considered higher-ups but we have no idea about the core secret in Blood Demon Church. For instance, I have no idea if there's any hidden expert in Blood Demon Church. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and didn't doubt what Elder Shuiyang said. I have a portrait here. Take a look and see if you know this person or if you have seen this person in Blood Demon Church. Jian Wushuang took out a painting of Leng Wushuang. Elder Shuiyang took a look at the portrait and he immediately looked shocked but he immediately shook his head. Mister, I've never seen this person. Are you sure? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. I'm sure. After all, a lady that looks this beautiful, if I were to see her, I definitely have an impression but I don't recall at all. This lady is definitely not in Blood Demon Church. Even if she were, I reckon she should be kept as maidservant by the people in the church. A maidservant that is so beautiful, who's willing to bring her out to share with everyone? Elder Shuiyang had yet to finish his sentence. Pack. Jian Wushuang had already given Elder Shuiyang a tight slap. Then Elder Shuiyang immediately spat a mouthful of blood and stunned. Maidservant. Jian Wushuang harumphed coldly. He knew very clearly that there might be people with great power in the world who could forcefully take control of a primordial great sinner. However, in Blood Demon Church, there wasn't anyone who had the ability to. Plus, according to the information that he had gotten from Vientiane Tower, Leng Rushua's position in Blood Demon Church was extraordinary. You'd better think about it carefully. If you say any more nonsense, you're going to die, Jian Wushuang bellowed. Yes, yes. Elder Shuiyang nodded continuously and his eyes suddenly twinkled. Yeah, mister. There's a mysterious person in Blood Demon Church. He might be the person you're looking for. A mysterious person? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Tell me. Chapter 1551 Leng Zunzhu. Chapter 1551, Leng Zunzhu. This person came to the Blood Demon Church more than 200 years ago. Moreover, she brought along a servant. For the past years, they have been living in the ancient Demon Mountain. Elder Shuiyang continued speaking. Ever since she came, the church master gave an order not to go near the ancient Demon Mountain. For the past 200 years, we never saw this person coming out again, although we knew that such a person did exist. Naturally, I have never seen her before. However, I can confirm she is a young woman and our church master addresses her as Leng Zunzhu. Leng Zunzhu? Jian Wushuang's eyes shrank. It's definitely her. Draw me the location of the ancient Demon Mountain, Jian Wushuang ordered. Understood, Elder Shuiyang agreed without hesitation. After Jian Wushuang had obtained what he wanted. Looking at the fact that you are cooperative, I can let you die an easier death. Jian Wushuang shot a glance toward Elder Shuiyang. What? Elder Shuiyang was shocked. When he was about to say something, a soul power headed for him straight away. After that, before he was even able to give a horrible shriek, he became an icy cold body. With a wave of the fiery king's hand, a great amount of flames appeared and burnt Elder Shuiyang's body to ashes. Jian Wushuang, Leng Zunzhu is the person you're looking for, right? The fiery king asked. That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. However, she is currently staying in the Blood Demon Church. Hence, it is next to impossible for her to come out by herself. There's no choice, we can only storm in. Charge in forcefully? The fiery king frowned slightly. The Blood Demon Church has a total of 4 real gods and among them, there is also an eternal real god. Hence, it is not a good idea to provoke them. I understand. However, the Blood Demon Church is very weak in comparison to the lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold and he immediately sent a message to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, I have already hired 3 real gods for you and they will arrive at the Blood Demon Church in a short while. At that time they will contact you. With the 3 real gods and fiery king who is with you, you can suppress the Blood Demon Church easily, Hall Master Yuan answered with great confidence. Thank you. I'm sorry to have troubled you, Jian Wushuang thanked Hall Master Yuan. After that, he waited quietly near the base of the Blood Demon Church with the fiery king. At the ancient Demon Mountain within the base of the Blood Demon Church. At the summit of the ancient Demon Mountain, there was a delicate black hall and there was a white-clothed woman sitting inside it. The white-clothed woman's face was covered with a veil and her looks could not be clearly seen. However, just her partially revealed face was enough to excite countless cultivators. The most important thing was that she was extremely cold and elegant. Such coldness and elegance was enough to captivate the souls of the people. She was Leng Zunzhu who Elder Shuiyang mentioned. At the very moment, behind Leng Zunzhu, there was a black-robed person standing respectfully and she was completely covered by the black robe. Number 7, please ask the Blood Demon Church Master about the progress of that matter, Leng Zunzhu asked coldly. Master, please don't worry. Not long ago the Blood Demon Church Master sent me a message. In 10 years' time, he will be able to complete what we asked of him. A hoarse, low voice could be heard from under the black robe of the black-robed person. From the sound of it, the black-robed person seemed to be an old married woman. He still needs 10 more years? His speed is really slow. I think he can stop being the Blood Demon Church Master. Leng Zunzhu remained indifferent. It seemed that in her eyes, the Blood Demon Church Master who had achieved the level of eternal real god was about the same as an ant. Master, with just a request from you, many people would be willing to allow you to take over the Blood Demon Church in place of him, the old married woman under the black robe laughed. Oh right. His Highness Wushuang should be reaching in a few days' time, right? His Highness Wushuang? Ah, he is really persistent. Did he come to earn my favor again? Leng Zunzhu laughed coldly. His Highness Wushuang knows that the master needs the 7-star moon warbler lotus. Hence, he used his father, the 7th palace master's power and almost destroyed a holy kingdom. With that, he finally obtained the 7-star moon warbler lotus, and this time round, he is coming over intentionally to give it to you, the black-robed old married woman said. Oh, looks like the 7th palace master really treats him like a treasure on his skin. However, it's also because of this that Wushuang was able to live until now. If not, with his attitude he would have been killed by people many times a long time ago. Since he wishes to earn my favor, so be it. Leng Zunzhu sneered and her eyes glowed with a cold light. After a few days, somewhere near the Blood Demon Church, the 3 real gods who Hall Master Yuan had hired to help Jian Wushuang arrived. Atop the vast void, 3 figures flew side by side. Among the 3 of them, the leader was a big and tall man who wore a bronze armor. As for the other 2, one of them was a red-robed old married woman, while the other one was a slightly hunchbacked, bald old man. As for Jian Wushuang, he felt an extremely huge amount of pressure from the 3 of them. Gosh. 2 eternal real gods and the last one is actually a chaotic real god. The fiery king revealed a shocked expression. In the 3 stages of real god, he was only at the top of the first stage. However, among the 3 people in front of him, 2 of them were at the second stage while the last person was at the third stage of a real god. With such a lineup, even if they were to be placed in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, it would be enough to destroy some medium-sized powerhouses that were weak in power. You are Jian Wushuang. The 3 real gods looked toward Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang was only a universe god, he was a super demon who ranked 3rd in the universe god ranking list. Moreover, he was also a Star Palace disciple of the lineage of Star. When looking at such a genius, the 3 real gods remained modest. I am Long Qing and you can call me real god Long Qing. As for the 2 of them, they are real god Bai Ying and real god Yin Tuo respectively. Among the 3 of them, the big, tall, bronze-armored man, who was also the strongest as a chaotic real god, opened his mouth to make his introduction. I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to the 3 of you. Jian Wushuang greeted the 3 of them modestly. Hall Master Yuan has told us the objective of this trip. However, as for the details for this operation, you will be the one to call the shots, real god Long Qing said. As Hall Master Yuan had given them great benefits, they had come to give Jian Wushuang a hand. For a short period of time, they would take instructions from Jian Wushuang. Since the 3 of you already know the objective, I need not say much. However, I must stress that the person I want must be captured alive. If there is really no choice, you can injure her. However, you cannot kill her. I would rather let her escape than let her die. Jian Wushuang said earnestly. The 3 real gods looked at each other in blank dismay and nodded their heads. They could also tell that the person Jian Wushuang wanted to capture alive had a special relationship with him. Also, I have obtained reliable news that Leng Zunzhu, who I wanted to capture alive, is currently within the ancient demon mountain of the Blood Demon Church. Moreover, she has not left the ancient demon mountain for over 200 years. Hence, we have no choice but to charge in forcefully. Chapter 1552 Barge In. Chapter 1552, Barge In. I had some dealings with Blood Demon Church before. Although there are 4 real gods besides Blood Demon Church Master who reached the second stage, the other 3 are just first stage void real gods. With our lineup, we can easily suppress Blood Demon Church, a bald elderly with a hunchback real god Yin Tuo said. Even so, let's not let our guards down. Jian Wushuang glanced at everyone around him. When we launch attack later, real god Bai Ying, real god Yin Tuo and brother Fiery King, the 3 of you tear the protective array apart and barge into Blood Demon Church for a massacre. The bigger the movement, the better. Real god Long Qing and I will seize the time when Blood Demon Church is in chaos to head over to Ancient Demon Mountain to capture Lord Leng alive. We retreat once we have caught her. Okay, real god Long Qing nodded. You get the final say. Real god Bai Ying and real god Yin Tuo showed respect to Jian Wushuang too. Only Fiery King creased his eyebrows. Jian Wushuang, you want to head to Ancient Demon Mountain personally? He remembered Hall Master Yuan had exhorted for Jian Wushuang not to reveal himself. I am responsible for Lord Leng. If I don't go personally, I can't be at ease. Jian Wushuang replied. If so, all right then. But please be extremely careful, Fiery King said. Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Very soon, the 5 of them arrived before the lair of Blood Demon Church. The 3 of you have to take action first, Jian Wushuang said. Don't worry about it. Real God Baiying, Real God Yin Tua and Fiery King immediately moved forward. Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing hid behind. Very quickly. Hong. The terrifying roar was heard from the void in the front and boundless crimson God burst out. It tore an opening in the protective array of Blood Demon Church. In the lair of Blood Demon Church, it instantly stirred a commotion. Who is it? A roar reverberated in the universe along with angry voices. Haha, giblets of Blood Demon Church, you exterminated the Fiery family 3 million years ago and I, Fiery King, have come back to take revenge. A laugh with tremendous momentum and a tinge of madness rang across the universe like thunder. Jian Wushuang could recognize Fiery King's voice the moment he heard it. As for whatever Fiery King had said about 3 million years, it was merely a random excuse that he had made up. There were countless powers and tribes that Blood Demon Church had exterminated in Blood Demon World. They reckoned they themselves didn't know if they had exterminated the Fiery family. Naturally, they thought Fiery King was simply there to take revenge. Hong. In Blood Demon Church, Real God Baiying, Real God Yin Tua and Fiery King spread their ferocious aura. Especially Real God Baiying and Real God Yin Tua, as they were 2 eternal real gods. 3 experts barging in and the experts in Blood Demon Church felt as though it was the end of the world. The team immediately exploded and all the real gods launched attacks wantonly. The universe gods had no room to interfere. Blood Demon Church was naturally in utter confusion and chaos. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang, who was waiting near the lair of Blood Demon Church, squinted his eyes. Real God Long Qing, let's move, Jian Wushuang said. Let me reign in my aura. The few real gods in Blood Demon Church were flustered at the sudden attack by Real God Baiying and the others. I think they won't have the time to probe carefully, so they shouldn't be able to notice me, Real God Long Qing said. That's great, let's go. Jian Wushuang and Universe God Long Qing immediately turned into flowing light and passed through the opening of Blood Demon Church's protective array to enter into Blood Demon Church. Then Jian Wushuang took out the route map that Elder Shuiyang had drawn earlier and he plunged in the direction where Ancient Demon Mountain was located. Although they had met many cultivators of Blood Demon Church on the way, the universe gods in Blood Demon Church were fleeing in a panic, helter-skelter. They didn't even bother to look at Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing. Even when they saw them, they would only treat them as people in Blood Demon Church. As for the real gods in Blood Demon Church who were fighting in the void, they were even more unlikely to notice them. Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing entered the depth of Blood Demon Church without hindrance. Ancient Demon Mountain, it's there. Jian Wushuang lifted his head and looked up at the ancient lofty peak at the end of his field of vision. That peak was Ancient Demon Mountain, also where Lord Leng stayed. Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing were approaching Ancient Demon Mountain at a terrifying speed. In the Black Palace on Ancient Demon Mountain. Leng, this is the 7-star moon warbler lotus. I've put in a great effort and finally got it. A stony-faced young man in a luxurious purple long robe flashed an enchanting smile while sitting before Lord Leng. He was holding the 7-star moon warbler lotus in his hand. Looking at the 7-star moon warbler lotus, Lord Leng's eyes glistened and smiled. Thank you, Your Highness Mu Hong. Don't mention it, the stony-faced man. His Highness Mu Hong looked at Lord Leng with passion in his eyes. Leng, I am quite free recently and I'd like to keep you company in Blood Demon Church. I wonder if it's okay. Your Highness Mu Hong, you must be joking. With your background you can go wherever you like. If you were to want to stay in Blood Demon Church, would there be anyone who would chase you away? Blood Demon Church Master doesn't have the guts to. Lord Leng smiled and replied. Haha, so you agree? His Highness Mu Hong immediately beamed with joy. Just then Hong. A vigorous roar was heard from afar and the few people in the Black Palace were frightened. What happened? His Highness Mu Hong's face changed slightly. It's Blood Demon Church. There were 3 real gods that barged in. They seem to be there to take revenge and they are fighting the Blood Demon Church Master now. A chubby red-haired middle-aged man behind His Highness Mu Hong replied. Is that so? His Highness Mu Hong nodded. Blood Demon Church worked for them and had made so many enemies. When the enemies had no power they naturally could only hold back. Whenever they grew stronger they would return to take revenge. It was very normal. His Highness, Blood Demon Church Master sent a message and said that the enemy is too strong. They couldn't stand it any longer. They'd like to ask your Highness for help, the chubby middle-aged man said. Humph, I just got here, I have no time to bother with this affair. Tell him to figure it out himself and that he has to take care of it soon. If it were to interrupt Leng and I'd kill him. His Highness Wushuang sounded cold. Let me tell him now, the chubby middle-aged man was going to reply. Something's wrong, the old lady in a black robe behind Lord Leng said in a hoarse voice. Chapter 1553 Redstone Prison. Chapter 1553, Redstone Prison. What's wrong? His Highness Wushuang and the fat, middle-aged man looked toward the old married woman. Someone has entered the spell that I have placed, the black-robed old married woman said. Oh? His Highness Wushuang frowned and shot a glance toward the fat middle-aged man who was beside him. Go and take a look. Understood. With a change of his body, the fat, middle-aged man disappeared from the palace. Number 7, you go as well, Zunzhu instructed. The black-robed old married man's figure also disappeared from the palace. Jian Wushuang and real god Qing had just reached the void around the ancient demon mountain. The moment they arrived, they were caught within a spell. Such a spell was simple. Hence, Jian Wushuang and real god Qing broke the spell quickly. However, at that moment, swish. A shadow appeared at the void in front of them. It was the fat middle-aged man. A universe god. The fat middle-aged man first swept his eyes across Jian Wushuang and he revealed a surprised expression. However, after that he took a look at real god Qing and his eyes shrank hastily. Jian Wushuang, looks like there are some mistakes in your information. There are other real gods present within the Blood Demon Church. Moreover, he should be a very powerful eternal real god Qing said. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded his head slightly and said immediately, I will leave this eternal real god to you. Ha, leave it to me. Real god Qing laughed heartily and a scarlet long spear appeared in his hands. Swoosh. With a flash of his body which looked like teleportation, real god Qing appeared beside the fat middle-aged man. The scarlet long spear in his hands then stabbed abruptly. Boom, the void collapsed at once. The whole universe was drawn in by the scarlet spear instantly, and in no time, the whole boundless universe headed toward the fat middle-aged man with great power. Such frightening power changed into an ear-piercing sound explosion. Kill. 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 Although real god Qing did not open his mouth, Jian Wushuang and the fat middle-aged man who were near the area seemed to have heard hysterical shouting sounds shouting, kill. A chaotic real god? The fat middle-aged man's expression changed greatly and he immediately swung his fat palms. Following his swing, a giant mountain appeared in front of him at once. The mountain was golden in color and it gave off an ancient vibe. The mountain was then used to block the attack of the scarlet long spear. However, at the next moment, the lofty mountain crumbled into pieces instantly. Even the ground, which was connected to it, caved in as if it had completely disappeared. What shocking power! This is a chaotic real god? Jian Wushuang revealed an astonished expression. He had seen real gods fighting before. However, those real gods were merely normal real gods of the first stage. As for chaotic real gods who were at the third stage, he had seen Lei Chao killing a real god before. However, as Lei Chao was very powerful and the real gods who he was killing were too weak, he was not able to tell the difference. However, at the very moment after seeing real god Qing's attack, he understood how frightening a chaotic real god was. He was very certain that it was lucky that the real god who stood in front of real god Qing was a very powerful eternal real god. If it were a void real god who was at the first stage with a stab from real god Qing, he would probably be able to kill tens of them. Umph. With a cold shout, the fat middle-aged man retreated quickly and his expression also became ghostly pale. Trying to escape? Real god Qing was filled with murderous intent. However, at the moment when real god Qing chased the fat middle-aged man, a figure appeared behind Jian Wushuang quietly. Swoosh. A dim light came out of the fingertips of the figure and headed towards Jian Wushuang's neck. Whoosh. Jian Wushuang's body changed and he avoided the dim light easily. He actually dodged it? The black-robed old married woman who became visible was surprised when she saw what had happened. It should be known that she was an eternal real god. Even though she had launched a surprise attack on a universe god abruptly, she had still failed to kill him. Jian Wushuang's blood mountain sword had already appeared in his hands and his icy cold eyes looked toward the black-robed old married woman. Another one. Seems like it's another eternal real god. Jian Wushuang was shocked. It was obvious that there were more hidden experts in the Blood Demon Church than he had expected. Little kid, a universe god like you actually dares to come here? Aren't you very gutsy? The black-robed old married woman laughed with a hoarse voice. After that, she lifted the sleeves of her robe and revealed 10 pitch-black, wizened fingers which were below the sleeves of her robe. At that very moment, the 10 fingers were filled with dim light and in no time rustle. A total of 10 rays of light shot out at the same time. Humph! Jian Wushuang gave a cold shout and his body dashed forward fiercely. Swished, a total of 18 shadows appeared at the same time. Jian Wushuang's body was like a ghost which passed through the void hastily. At the same time, he also bypassed the dim lights and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the black-robed old married woman. Crimson light. His sword light glowed as if it were crimson lightning and it headed straight for the black-robed old married woman's neck. Compared to back when he was in Wu Bei's cave, the power of the crimson lightning that Jian Wushuang had unleashed at that very moment had risen considerably. In particular, its speed had become about twice as fast. This martial art motion. The black-robed old married woman revealed an astonished expression. After that, the 5 fingers on one of her hands changed into a sharp claw at once and headed toward the crimson lightning. Clang. A sound resembling the sounds of metal clashing could be heard and the black-robed old married woman's body floated backwards. At the same time she revealed a smile. I see. No wonder his abilities are so impressive. It was obvious that the black-robed old married woman had already figured out Jian Wushuang's identity. However, at that very moment, bam! It was another loud sound. A short distance away, the fat middle-aged man was spitting out many mouthfuls of blood continuously from his mouth. His aura then became weaker in an instant. Such a scene had caused the eyes of the black-robed old married woman to shrink. At the next moment, boom! Imposing divine power which could blot out the sky burst forth from her body and headed toward the universe. The divine power came together at the void and transformed into red giant stones. The giant stones then stacked onto and pressed against each other, forming a giant prison that was completely made up of red giant stones. Moreover, the prison had many red walls and in a split second, the red walls isolated Jian Wushuang and real god Qing completely. Taking advantage of the moment that the red stone prison was forming, the black-robed old married woman and the fat middle-aged man retreated immediately. This is... Jian Wushuang frowned and looked around him. He was currently in a corridor which was formed by the red giant stones and red walls stood on both sides of him. Moreover, the red stone walls were strange as they even blocked off his soul power. Break! Jian Wushuang unleashed an unreasonable amount of strength with the intent to break the red stone walls. However, the hardness of the red stone walls had completely exceeded his expectations. A stroke with his power had only managed to leave a sword mark that was neither big nor small on the red stone walls. Moreover, the sword mark closed up again in a split second. Chapter 1554, His Highness Mu Hong. Chapter 1554, His Highness Mu Hong. On the peak of ancient Demon Mountain in the Black Palace. Swoosh, swoosh. The old lady in a black robe and the chubby middle-aged man appeared simultaneously. The old lady in a black robe looked extremely solemn while the chubby middle-aged man looked miserable. He was covered in blood and his aura was extremely weak. What happened? His Highness Mu Hong creased his eyebrows and asked. Your Highness, the experts that barged into Blood Demon Church this time should be coming for us. They have 3 real gods fighting against the people of Blood Demon Church on the surface, but they have one chaotic real god who came here, the chubby middle-aged man said. Chaotic real god? His Highness Mu Hong said. Master, the old lady in a black robe looked at Lord Leng and said politely, there are 2 of them who barged into my formation. One of them is a chaotic real god while another, if I'm not mistaken, should be the top genius from lineage of Star who is extremely famous, Jian Wushuang. Lord Leng, who had been sitting down at ease, her body suddenly quivered when she heard Jian Wushuang's name. There was a glimpse of an unnoticeable expression in her eyes. Jian Wushuang? The 3rd place on Universe God ranking list? His Highness Mu Hong's face grew cold. Yes, it's him. Jian Wushuang is really monstrous. He is only a Universe God, but even I had to put in some effort to deal with him. I can't do anything about him. His strength might already be able to compared favorably to a peak void real gods. The lady in a black robe nodded. Humph, how monstrous. If it wasn't because I happened to break through and became a real god at the time, When Wu Bei's cave came to the world, I couldn't have entered Wu Bei's cave. Otherwise, why would the white blaze fruits and white blaze fruit trees fall into his hands? His Highness Wuhuang sneered. The old lady in a black robe heard him and only smiled in silence but didn't say much. Number 7. What's the situation like? Lord Leng asked. Master, I trapped both the chaotic real god and Jian Wushuang using redstone prison temporarily. However, the chaotic real god is too strong. I'm afraid he will break my redstone prison forcefully in no time. The old lady in a black robe looked solemn. Redstone prison was her strongest trump card. Under normal circumstances, it should be sufficient to trap an ordinary chaotic real god. But the power of real god Qing, who was trapped in redstone prison then, definitely wasn't an ordinary chaotic real god. Master, before redstone prison breaks open from the chaotic real god, we'd better leave first, the old lady in a black robe said. Your Highness, hurry up and leave too, the chubby middle-aged man said anxiously. He was already severely injured by the chaotic real god and he had barely any fighting power left. What's the hurry? His Highness Wuhuang said in a low voice. I've heard about Jian Wushuang for more than once. I heard that he is the top genius standing at the peak of eternal chaotic world. I wanted to fight against him long ago. Now that I have the chance, how can I miss it? But, the chubby middle-aged man wanted to say something. Shut up, His Highness Wuhuang reprimanded him, then he looked at Lord Leng with a faint smile. Leng, wait for me here for a while. I'll be right back. Lord Leng nodded faintly. His Highness Wuhuang left the palace with the chubby middle-aged man. Number 7, Lord Leng commanded, you follow them. Remember, you only have to deal with the chaotic real god. As for Jian Wushuang, let His Highness Wuhuang deal with him on his own. Yes, the old lady in a black robe nodded, then she disappeared in the palace again. In the Black Palace, there's only Lord Leng sitting alone in silence. On Lord Leng's face, which was covered with a veil, there was a malicious smile. She rubbed her stomach involuntarily with her delicate hand. There was a consciousness in deep sleep. She had sealed off the consciousness long ago with all the tricks she had on hand. Sister, your sweetheart is so stubborn. He really chased after you from Green Fire World to Eternal Chaotic World. In merely 10,000 years he became so famous. He's really outstanding. No wonder you're so into him. It's a pity that his heart is with you. Otherwise, your younger sister, me, would be quite attracted to him. Lord Leng muttered to herself. Her voice was so ghostly and creepy. Jian Wushuang, as you're here, let me take a good look at your capability. Hee hee. In the huge red stone prison that covered the vast universe, Jian Wushuang and real god Qing were trapped in the prison. They couldn't break it apart in a short period of time. Then, His Highness Wuhuang, the chubby middle-aged man and the old lady in a black robe appeared in a corner of the red stone prison. Your Highness Wuhuang, Jian Wushuang is at the end of this passageway. Just walk along the passageway ahead and you'll see him. I'll have to deal with a chaotic real god, so I'll not keep you company. The old lady in a black robe bowed and then plunged in the direction of real god Qing. In the passageway in red stone prison, His Highness Wuhuang stood side by side with the chubby middle-aged man. Your Highness, I fought with a chaotic real god earlier and got severely injured. Not even 10% of my power has recovered yet and Jian Wushuang isn't weak. What if? The chubby middle-aged man had yet to finish what he wanted to say. What do you mean by, what if? Your Highness Wuhuang glared at the chubby middle-aged man. Leng is waiting outside as she watches. You want to embarrass me before her? The chubby middle-aged man's face changed, but he never spoke again. Humph, he's just a universe god. Even if he is a genius, just how strong he can be. His Highness Wuhuang had a scornful look. He was pampered since birth and he had his father as his backer. He had always been riding roughshod over everything and never bothered with anyone, including those geniuses in Eternal Chaotic World. The most important thing was that he was extremely confident in his power. One should know that he had already broken through and become real god, and he had already comprehended one of the 9 heaven god doctrines, Darkness Doctrine. Although his comprehension towards Darkness Doctrine wasn't high and wasn't at the standard of passing the first level of Doctrine Palace, he possessed extremely aggressive real god armor and divine weapons because of his father. On top of that, he had cultivated some secret skills and his fighting power had already reached the peak of a void real god. With such a fighting power, from his point of view, no matter how amazing a universe god was, he would be able to win against him. Don't be in a hurry to fight with him directly. Let my 2 war puppets play with him first. His Highness Wuhuang smirked coldly. He waved and two tall figures appeared before him. They were two war puppets of void god level. Under the guidance of His Highness Wushuang, the two war puppets plunged ahead in the passageway. Chapter 1555, A Great Change. Chapter 1555, A Great Change. At one of the passages within the Redstone prison, Jian Wushuang had an icy cold expression. As he held the Blood Mountain sword on his right hand, he walked forward slowly and his eyes remained vigilant regarding his surroundings at all times. He had already attempted to break open the Redstone prison moments ago. However, he discovered that he did not have the ability to do so as he could not even break open the stone wall which was beside him. Without any choice, he could only follow the passage in front of him and continue walking slowly. Although this prison is sturdy, it was still created by an eternal real god. With real god Qing's abilities, he should be able to break out in a short while, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. At that moment, at the front of the passage, two big shadows appeared in front of him. Battle puppets? Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Void real god level battle puppets. The two battle puppets were each holding a saber on their hands. Their icy cold, unfeeling eyes had also locked onto Jian Wushuang firmly. In the next moment, the two big shadows moved at the same time. Boom. Boom. Two frightening power burst forth abruptly. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold and he unleashed his martial art motion instantly. Back then, when he was traveling in Wu Bei's cave, his martial art motion had been recognized as the #1 among the universe gods. Moreover, at that time, his comprehension of the spacetime doctrine was only at the beginner's level. After leaving Wu Bei's cave, a total of 1,800 years had passed. During the 1,800 years, with the help of the real God Hall, his comprehension of the spacetime doctrine had improved greatly. At that very moment, it had also achieved the standard necessary to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom was also controlled by the power of spacetime. The higher the comprehension of spacetime doctrine, the more frightening his martial art motion was. At that very moment, when Jian Wushuang had unleashed his martial art motion again, it was a lot stronger than back then when he had unleashed it in Wu Bei's cave. Swish. Swish. Among the 18 shadows, when the two of them were near the two battle puppets, both of them did an action mimicking a sword swing. The two battle puppets also took out their sabers instantly and swung them with their great power. At once, the swings became shrill saber light which struck Jian Wushuang's body. However, it was obvious that what they had struck was merely a phantom. As for Jian Wushuang, his real body unleashed a random stroke which was like an arc of light and he struck the necks of the two battle puppets easily. Two heads were then sent flying immediately. Without their heads, the two battle puppets collapsed at once. Clap, clap. Clapping sounds could be heard. When Jian Wushuang raised his head to take a look, he saw that His Highness Wushuang and the fat middle-aged were walking toward him slowly. As expected of the top genius who is able to rank third on the Universe God ranking list. These two demon god puppets of mine actually possessed the fighting capabilities of void real gods. However, they were destroyed by you instantly, His Highness Wushuang giggled. However, he was still a bit amazed. Oh. Jian Wushuang stared at the two of them, especially the fat middle-aged man. His expression could not help but change, but he heaved a sigh of relief after that. It's still all right. This eternal real god has been seriously injured by real god Qing just now. Hence, he should not be able to unleash much of his fighting capabilities. Jian Wushuang was still extremely fearful of the eternal real gods. As for His Highness Wushuang, Jian Wushuang could tell that he was only at the level of a void god. Hence, he was not too afraid. Jian Wushuang, today I really wish to see exactly how strong a top genius like you who is on the Universe God ranking list is. His Highness Wushuang laughed coldly. Without saying many unnecessary words, a green sickle appeared in his hands. The edge of the green sickle was extremely small but sharp. Under the illumination of the red stones around the area, the green sickle emitted an icy cold dark red luster. Jian Wushuang held the Blood Mountain sword in his hands tightly. Haha, let's fight. His Highness Wushuang laughed coldly and with a movement of his feet, the green sickle changed into a green glittering light and proceeded to attack with lightning speed. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Many green saber lights seemed to descend at the same time and they shrouded Jian Wushuang instantly. Jian Wushuang released the divine power in his hands and also activated the secret skill of the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor completely. After that, the Blood Mountain sword attacked straight away. Clang! Even though it was only the first clash, Jian Wushuang's expression changed. What strength! He has probably achieved the peak of a void real god. There were both strong and weak void real gods. The weak ones were the very normal void real gods, and normally, the top 30 of the universe god ranking list could compete with them. As for the top 10 on the universe god ranking list, they could kill the void real gods. However, there were also void real gods who had comprehended a small bit of the power of Heaven Way. With that, their abilities were no longer normal. As for the top of the void real gods, normally, their comprehension of the power of Heaven Way would allow them to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. One such example was the Fiery King, who was a peak void real god. However, for His Highness Wushuang, who was in front of him, although his comprehension of the power of Heaven Way was not very high, due to some secret skills as well as the treasures that he possessed, he could also unleash the fighting capabilities of a peak void real god. Jian Wushuang, why have you been on the defensive ever since we started fighting? Come on, show me your moves. Or could it be that you have been pushed back by me so much that you are unable to counterattack? His Highness Wushuang laughed loudly and swung the green sickle in his hands continuously. Every swing held a great amount of power and pushed Jian Wushuang back to the point that he had to retreat continuously. However, although Jian Wushuang was retreating continuously, his eyes remained icy cold and his expression did not show any fear. Although this person possesses the fighting capabilities of a peak void real god, he does not have much experience in close-quarters combat. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted slightly. At the next moment, his body moved and he unleashed the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom as well as his unusual martial art motion at the same time. Jian Wushuang's ghost-like body avoided the saber lights that His Highness Wushuang unleashed easily, and he appeared in front of His Highness Wushuang. 10,000 shadows. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. A huge number of sword shadows appeared at the same time. Under the influence of Jian Wushuang's power of space-time, every sword shadow was unbelievably fast. What? His Highness Wushuang's expression changed slightly and he swung his green sickle immediately to block. His body was also forced to retreat. Jian Wushuang stood in his position and a small bit of disdain flashed past his eyes. Seems like I have overestimated him. Although he indeed has the fighting capabilities of a peak void real god, his close-quarter combat abilities are too weak. While he has the abilities, he is unable to unleash them completely. Jian Wushuang sneered, I shall stop wasting my time on him and kill him directly. Jian Wushuang glowed with murderous intent. In a split second, an enormous amount of soul power burst forth and a giant golden divine ape covered his body. His divine power and soul power had combined beautifully. With that, Jian Wushuang's abilities had achieved their peak. Next, Jian Wushuang was about to launch his attack. However, all of a sudden, an unusual change occurred. Boom. Jian Wushuang felt as if he had been struck by a streak of lightning from a clear sky. His body paused at his position and his heart was beating madly. This is... Of all times, why must it be now? No. Jian Wushuang roared within his mind and his expression also became unusually ugly. He had never expected this to happen. At the critical moment where he was in the Redstone prison, which was very close to Leng Wuxia, his inverse cultivation test for the third heaven actually descended without any warning. Chapter 1556. The third inverse cultivation test is here. Chapter 1556. The third inverse cultivation test is here. Inverse cultivation test. It was the biggest test that Jian Wushuang had to pass as an inverse cultivator. He had experienced 2 inverse cultivation tests previously and passed them in extreme danger. Among the 2 inverse cultivation tests, when the first inverse cultivation test had descended, there were signs 120 years before that had allowed him to prepare for 120 years. For the second inverse cultivation test, the signs had come 10 years before the test. He at least got to prepare for 10 years. But then, the third inverse cultivation test. There wasn't any sign, nor did it give any time for Jian Wushuang to prepare himself. It didn't even worry about what kind of situation Jian Wushuang was in and descended directly. It suddenly descended as he was fighting against His Highness Wushuang. Why now? Why didn't even give me any time to prepare? I don't need much. One day it'd be great even if it was only 2 hours. Jian Wushuang roared from the bottom of his heart. Leng Wuxia was within a stone's throw away from him. He only needed a little bit of time and he'd be able to see Leng Wuxia. He then would figure a way to suppress her. But, out of all moments, the third inverse cultivation test had descended at this critical time. However, the inverse cultivation test was different from the previous two. There weren't any clouds. From the outside, Jian Wushuang didn't see changes, but only he knew that he was in the process of going through the test. Jian Wushuang die. His Highness Muhang's eyes were cold with a tinge of murderous intention. He raised the green sickle high. Wow! A huge blade light appeared, then the air burst from the pressure and became a luxurious blade river. Jian Wushuang's face dimmed as he saw the luxurious blade river flowing towards him. Blood Mountain sword in his hand immediately became a bolt of crimson lightning and suddenly swept out. Just as the sword light swept out, Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted. My divine power is weakening. There was a loud bang and Jian Wushuang retreated from the impact. Haha. His Highness Muhang laughed as he wielded his sickle and charged towards Jian Wushuang ferociously. The blade lights swung out from his hand. He obviously wanted to crush Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword to block with all his strength. However, during the process, Jian Wushuang could clearly feel that his divine power was constantly weakening. Not only in terms of divine power, it included his soul power, his comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine, spacetime doctrine, and even sword principle that he had created, but they were also all weakening tremendously. How could it be? Jian Wushuang was shocked and angry. If he were to be at his tip-top condition, when he collaborates his divine power with soul power to give full play to his power, he could totally defeat his Highness Muhang easily. He could even kill him. But then his power was deteriorating at a terrifying speed. From fighting forcefully with his Highness Muhang, to barely evenly matching, to being at a disadvantage, it only took an instant. Then Jian Wushuang was almost losing. Regardless of speed or strength, he was far behind his Highness Muhang. Looking at his Highness wielding his sickle again and again, even though Jian Wushuang had blocked the blade light, Jian Wushuang was retreating at every collision due to the fierce impact. Crushing him. It was almost torture. The genius in the top 10 on Universe God ranking list, your ability is just like this. Weak too weak. Jian Wushuang, I overestimated your power. His Highness Muhang was holding his green sickle with one hand as he overlooked Jian Wushuang coldly. There was disdain in his eyes. I previously wondered just how amazing a top genius in Universe God ranking list could be, but from what I see now, you're only rubbish. Your kind is not worth my attention. Die. His Highness Muhang let out a green glow and the murderous intention suddenly surfaced from his body. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Just then. Hong. A terrifying loud roar was suddenly heard from a corner of Redstone Prison. Then, the originally sturdy redstone prison that even Jian Wushuang at his peak could damage started trembling. The surrounding redstone walls started cracking. In a short while, voila! The redstone prison collapsed. Humph! Your prison is pretty impressive, but it's not enough to trap me, Long Qing. A cold harumph suddenly exploded in the universe. Then they immediately saw a fierce divine power explode in a corner of the void and fly in all directions. The old lady in a black robe who was dealing with real god Long Qing with her all looked terrified. At the moment when real god Long Qing broke Redstone Prison apart. Hurry up and run. The old lady in a black robe let out a low roar and her figure instantly retreated. Your Highness, let's hurry up and leave. The chubby, middle-aged man appeared before his Highness Muhang. But Jian Wushuang, his Highness Muhang glanced at Jian Wushuang. He wanted to kill Jian Wushuang before he left. Hurry up and run. Otherwise, we won't escape in time. The chubby, middle-aged man immediately grabbed his Highness Muhang by his hand. Then the two of them instantly fled. Rumble. A terrifying divine power pressed from all directions and the ruins of the collapsed redstone prison were crushed into pieces. Then there was a figure that soared up into the sky. It was real god Long Qing and he was raging with imposing aura. Looking at the few people fleeing hastily in the void, he wanted to chase but he suddenly noticed Jian Wushuang's existence. Jian Wushuang, you are... Real god Long Qing looked at Jian Wushuang with his eyebrows tightly knitted. He could tell that Jian Wushuang was in very bad condition. Jian Wushuang's divine power and aura were already weakened to an extreme low and it was constantly weakening still. Jian Wushuang felt that all his strength was vanishing. He sat on the ground with his body slightly shivering. He couldn't move an inch. But suddenly Jian Wushuang lifted his head and roared, Real god Long Qing, don't bother about me. Hurry up and chase after them. Remember, you must catch the lady in Ancient Demon Mountain alive. Catch her alive. Real God Long Qing creased his eyebrows and nodded heavily. Then, just as real God Long Qing plunged out and almost stepped foot on ancient Demon Mountain. Virum. A boundless black fog suddenly soared up from ancient Demon Mountain, just like a black ocean. It instantly swept across heaven and earth and covered the entire universe. Wow, wow, wow. From the black ocean, an enormous amount of black fog formed into creepy black waves and lapped at real God Long Qing from all directions. Although real God Long Qing was a chaotic real god, he seemed to be in a fix from the attack of the creepy black waves. What the hell is this? Real God Long Qing's gaze turned cold and he constantly stabbed with his spear as he let out an imposing power to break the black waves. However, the moment it broke, more black waves ravaged over. Chapter 1557, Very Close. Chapter 1557, Very Close. Damn it. Real God Long Qing was extremely furious. With a stab of his long spear abruptly, the strong fighting capabilities of a chaotic real god burst forth and it was as if even the heavens could be pierced. As for the vast Black Sea, 10% of it was annihilated by that stab instantly. However, it returned to normal quickly and the great black waves continued to head toward him madly like before. Without question, the Black Sea was even more troublesome than the red stone prison had been previously. At that very moment, at the center of the Black Sea, which was also the peak of the ancient Demon Mountain, a white-clothed woman's body appeared slowly. Her white clothes were whiter than snow and her face was covered with a veil. She looked just like a celestial beauty from a painting and she was walking out slowly. Even though her looks could not be seen clearly, the special coldness and elegance of her were sufficient to make everything in the world be visibly moved. As for Jian Wushuang, who was sitting on the ground, he raised his head fiercely. His sharp eyes then locked on to the white-clothed woman at once. Leng Wuxia. Even Jian Wushuang's voice was trembling. However, he still felt delighted and furious. He was delighted as he had finally found his wife after being separated for so many years. He was furious as his wife's body was being controlled by Leng Wuxia at that very moment. As Jian Wushuang stared at the white-clothed woman was also examining him closely. Jian Wushuang, long time no see, the white-clothed woman Leng Zunzhu's voice could be heard. After so many years, you still didn't give up. You are really persistent. I have said before. Even if you walk to the end of the world, I will still be able to find you, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Yes, you have found me. However, what can you do even though you have found me? Leng Zunzhu sneered, do you have the ability to suppress me? Look at your miserable state now. If not for me being worried about some agreements that I made with her back then and the fact that she might create some trouble for me in the future if I didn't keep my promise, I would actually act now and kill you straight away. The she, who Leng Zunzhu mentioned was naturally referring to the consciousness of Leng Wushuang who had been sealed by her. Upon hearing Leng Zunzhu's words, Jian Wushuang was shocked and he could not help but clench both his fists tightly. He then spoke with a low voice, I might not be able to do anything against you today. However, I will still repeat myself. Even if you walk to the end of the world, no matter how long it takes, 1,000,000 years or even 10,000,000 years, as long as I, Jian Wushuang, am not dead, I will do my utmost best to find and suppress you. There will surely come a day where I help her to take back what belongs to her. Haha, is that so? Leng Zunzhu laughed evilly and her eyes squinted slightly. Very good. I'll be waiting. Let's go. Leng Zunzhu turned her body and left with his Highness Wushuang and the rest of the people. Damn it. As for Jian Wushuang, he raised his head and stared at the back view of Leng Zunzhu closely as she left. His heart was quivering and roaring madly to release all his dissatisfaction. He had finally found Leng Wuxia. Leng Wuxia was just standing in front of him. She was extremely close to him. However, he could not act to suppress Leng Wuxia and rescue his wife. He could only look on as Leng Wuxia left. Although she was so close, she was still out of reach. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang had already neglected the fact that he was still in the midst of the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven. He also didn't know what kind of unbelievable change was occurring inside his own body. Buzz. As Leng Zunzhu and her people disappeared from Jian Wushuang and real God Long Qing's line of vision, the Black Sea which had spread all over the universe started to dissipate slowly. Real God Long Qing was finally freed from the Black Sea. His eyes were filled with seriousness as he looked in the direction that Leng Zunzhu left in. Who exactly was that woman just now? At the very moment, real God Long Qing felt very uneasy. Even though her realm is not high and she seems to have not even reached the level of an eternal real god, the technique that she used just now caused even me to be fearful. Moreover, what exactly is the move that she used? Although he had stayed in the Black Sea for quite a while, he was still unable to tell how the Black Sea was formed. Although it looked like a realm treasure, that was not it. It also didn't look like a secret skill that was executed by relying on her divine power. Instead, it was another special kind of power. And Leng Zunzhu possessed such a power. Jian Wushuang wants me to suppress her. If it were close quarters combat, even if it were me, I couldn't guarantee that I could defeat her. Hence, it is absolutely impossible to capture her alive. Real God Long Qing shook his head. After that, he turned his body and headed in the direction of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. Real God Long Qing had appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and he was about to talk to him. What is it? All of a sudden, Real God Long Qing became stunned. As he stared at Jian Wushuang closely, his face was filled with astonishment and disbelief. How did you become like this? Inside the Blood Demon Church. At that very moment, the Blood Demon Church was too tragic to look at. 3 real gods, of which 2 were eternal real gods, charged in and unleashed a killing spree wantonly. Although the real gods of the Blood Demon Church had given their all to repel them, they could not do anything as the gap between their abilities was too big. For example, the Blood Demon Church Master had only just become an eternal real god. As for Real God Baiying and Real God Yin Tua, they were at a peak level when compared to the other eternal real gods. Hence, among the both of them, either one of them could suppress the Blood Demon Church Master easily. In addition, there was still the Fiery King who was a void real god who stood at the top. Therefore, he crushed the higher-ups of the Blood Demon Church directly. Even the Blood Demon Church Master escaped tragically straight away. As for the 3 void real gods in the Blood Demon Church, 2 of them were killed on the spot while the other one escaped with serious injuries. As for the universe gods who were the higher-ups of the Blood Demon Church, Fiery King and the rest of the party did not let them off either. As such, many of them were killed. In any case, the Blood Demon Church was finished. As for the universe god disciples within the church, all of them had already escaped outside the sect. In the very moment, Real God Baiying, Real God Yin Tua and the Fiery King were heading toward the direction of the ancient demon mountain. While traveling, the 3 of them were chatting with one another as well. In the beginning, the Blood Demon Church Master was still quite arrogant. After knowing that we have a lineup of 2 eternal real gods and a void real god, he still bragged that he would make us stay in the Blood Demon Church forever. I really wonder where he got his courage from. At the start, I still thought that the Blood Demon Church had some sort of trump card. In the end, they had nothing but the Blood Demon Church Master boasting outrageously. However, it's a pity. In the end, we still allowed the Blood Demon Church Master to escape. The 3 of them felt that it was a pity. The Blood Demon Church Master had done all kinds of evil. Hence, when they had acted this time round, they had planned to completely eliminate the Blood Demon Church. However, in the end, they did not manage to do what they had wanted. However, in actual fact, they didn't know that the Blood Demon Church Master was not bragging previously. He had really wanted to get the 3 of them to stay forever. The basis was that His Highness Wushuang and Leng Zunzhu were willing to help him. However, in the end, His Highness Wushuang and Leng Zunzhu had never paid any attention to him. As such, he had escaped as he could not do anything. I wonder how Real God Long Qing and Jian Wushuang are doing. With Real God Long Qing, a chaotic real god, going there personally, there will definitely be no problem. While chatting with one another, the 3 of them arrived at the place where Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing were in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1558, Gray-Haired, Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1558, Gray-Haired, Jian Wushuang. Real God Long Qing. Real God Baiying, Real God Yin Tua and Fiery King lowered themselves. Why are only you here? Where's Jian Wushuang? Fiery King was the first who asked. Jian Wushuang. He's there. Real God Long Qing beckoned to the ground below. The 3 of them then noticed the figure on the ground below. From that one glance, Real God Baiying, Real God Yin Tua and Fiery King were shocked. He's Jian Wushuang? Real God Baiying was shocked. How is it possible? From his aura, it is really him, Real God Yin Tua exclaimed in surprise. While Fiery King's face grew dim. The 3 of them could see the figure on the ground below, but the figure had gray hair, a hoary look, and his body was like a withered tree. It was just like an elderly who had reached old age. On top of that, the gray-haired elderly had no fluctuation of divine power at all. He was just like a common person. A total commoner. The gray-haired common elder was one of the members widely recognized in Eternal Chaotic World, Jian Wushuang. Swoosh. Fiery King was the first to plunge down and appear before the gray-haired elderly. It was as though he had felt Fiery King's arrival. The gray-haired elderly lifted his head slightly and revealed a face that looked like Jian Wushuang's but obviously a few times older. The face was hoary and he could barely force a smile at Fiery King. Jian Wushuang, it's really you? Fiery King's eyes were wide open. Even though there was a drastic change in Jian Wushuang's appearance, the fluctuation of divine power vanished, the aura was extremely weak. The nature of the weak aura was really one that he was familiar with. Fiery King was definite that the gray-haired elderly was really Jian Wushuang. Why did you become like this? Fiery King's face grew grave and his voice was low. At the same time he glanced at real God Long Qing. Real God Long Qing, weren't you with Jian Wushuang the whole time? Why did you let him turn into such a condition? Fiery King was hot-tempered and Jian Wushuang did good grace to him. Looking at Jian Wushuang's condition, he didn't worry about if real God Long Qing was a chaotic real god but reprimanded him. However, real God Long Qing only creased his eyebrows slightly. Brother Fiery King. Jian Wushuang, who had become a gray-haired elderly, spoke. His voice was hoarse and weak. This has nothing to do with real God Long Qing. He did his best. The reason why I became like this is due to my personal body condition. Personal body condition? Fiery King squinted his eyes. Let's forget about this. We barged into Blood Demon Church and made a huge scene. We may have already startled real God Jiogong. Hence, it's best we leave here first, Jian Wushuang said. All right, Fiery King answered. Real God Long Qing, real God Bai Ying and real God Yin Tuan nodded heavily in agreement. Brother Fiery King, please lend me a hand. Jian Wushuang suddenly extended his hand. His hand was hoary too and his skin was so dry that it cracked. I have no divine power at all. I can't even travel. I can only ask Brother Fiery King to give me a ride. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Fiery King felt a tug at his heartstrings and his gaze at Jian Wushuang was filled with sympathy. Very soon the five of them departed. However, Jian Wushuang was on Fiery King's back. On the way Jian Wushuang never spoke. As for Fiery King, real God Long Qing and the rest were in silence. No one spoke. However, not long after they had traveled from Blood Demon Church. Virum. A ferocious power suddenly descended. Then, there was immediately a 3-meter-tall figure, a giant-like elderly in a purple robe appeared in the void from nowhere. Looking at the elderly in a purple robe, the few of them who were originally traveling forward suddenly stopped as their eyes contracted in shock. Greetings to Mr. Jiogong from Long Qing. Real God Long Qing bowed slightly before the elderly in a purple robe. It's real God Jiogong. We're in trouble. Real God Bai Ying, real God Yin Tuan and Fiery King were terrified. Jian Wushuang, who was on Fiery King's back, couldn't help but lift his head to steal a glance at the elderly in a purple robe. Real God Jiogong was the king of Jiogong Holy Kingdom. At the same time lineage of Star was fearful of him. They didn't dare to send any real gods from their sect to Jiogong Holy King. He was a superb expert on the 5th place on real god ranking list. Although real God Long Qing was a chaotic real god compared to real God Jiogong, he was far behind. When they met, just like then, real God Long Qing had to refer to real God Jiogong as Mr. Real God Long Qing, the extermination of Blood Demon Church is your doing? Real God Jiogong stood there with his cold voice and asked in a calm manner, but every word he uttered hammered the few of their hearts brutally. They were all shivering in fear. Such terrifying power, Fiery King clenched his teeth and complimented. Mr. Jiogong, yes, it is our doing, real God Long Qing replied carefully. Humph, Blood Demon Church is one of the forces under the control of Holy Kingdom Jiogong. Before you took action against it, you didn't even inform me. Wasn't that disrespectful to me? Real God Jiogong harumphed coldly and there was anger in his eyes. Real God Long Qing's face grew grave. He thought for a while and took out a Chen Kung ring. I am really not considerate enough regarding what happened today. There are 20 doctrine gems in this Chen Kung ring. Consider this an apology. Only 20? Real God Jiogong's gaze was cold. 200 doctrine gems and I'll let the few of you off. Otherwise, none of you will be leaving. 200. Real God Long Qing stunned. Real God Bai Ying and real God Yin Tua stunned. Doctrine gem was an extremely precious treasure to real gods as it was very useful. Any ordinary eternal real god would only have 10 doctrine gems at most. 200 doctrine gems was also a huge figure to real god Qing, who was a chaotic real god. Fine, I'll give them to you. Real god Qing threw another Qian ring out directly. Although 200 doctrine gem wasn't a small amount, real god Qing accepted Hall Master Yuan's invitation and Hall Master Yuan offered him a higher price than that. After real god Jianghu took the Qian ring, he glanced and nodded, "You can leave now." Fiery King and the rest let out a breath of relief and immediately prepared to leave. But then, real god Jianghu suddenly fixed his gaze on Jian Wushuang. Who is this person that didn't even have any fluctuation of divine power? Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. He knew clearly that if real god Jianghu were to find out his real identity, he couldn't even think about leaving Holy Kingdom Jianghu alive. Fiery King immediately replied, "Mister, this is my relative. Many years ago he got caught by Blood Demon Church and was tortured. His training was in vain entirely and he turned into a commoner. I barged into Blood Demon Church today to take revenge and to rescue him." "Is that so?" Real god Jianghu raised his eyebrows but didn't suspect. "Let's go." Fiery King and the rest quickly brought Jian Wushuang with them and left. Chapter 1559, A Shocking Transformation. Chapter 1559, A Shocking Transformation. Real god Qing, real god Baiying, real god Yin Tua and the Fiery King were traveling while carrying Jian Wushuang with them. After some time, they finally left the Jianghu Holy Kingdom's territory. In the Black Void. "We have finally come out." Real god Qing and the rest of them heaved a sigh of relief. The Jianghu Holy Kingdom had real god Jianghu. As soon as he discovered Jian Wushuang's real identity, even the few of them could not get away scot-free. That real god Qing is really very unreasonable. He actually asked for 200 doctrine gems. "Yes. Intua, you and I are both unable to fork out 200 doctrine gems. Only real god Qing is able to do it." Real god Baiying and real god Intua sighed. Real god Jianghu is known for being unreasonable. Real god Qing said, "After all, the Blood Demon Church is a big powerhouse within the Holy Kingdom that he controls. Without getting a green light from him, we destroyed it directly. Moreover, it's already not too bad that he didn't kill all of us straight away. As for the 200 doctrine gems, it's nothing." After sighing for some time, real god Qing looked toward Jian Wushuang. "Jian Wushuang, although the mission this time around could not be completed and that you became like this as well, the three of us had done our best." "I know." Jian Wushuang nodded his head slightly. "Thank you and I'm sorry for troubling the three of you. After I get back I will explain to Hall Master Yuan clearly. As for the rewards that Hall Master Yuan have promised previously, they will definitely be given in full." "Thank you very much." Real god Qing thanked Jian Wushuang. After that, he left with real god Baiying and real god Yin Tua. They only came when they were hired. Since they had already finished what they were supposed to do, they would naturally leave. In the void, only the Fiery King and Jian Wushuang remained. "Jian Wushuang, how did you become like this?" the Fiery King could not help but ask. In the beginning, he had thought that Jian Wushuang became his current state as he had been poisoned by a potent poison. However, a great amount of time had passed since traveling from the Blood Demon Church to their current location. Even after that, Jian Wushuang still did not get any better. Hence, the Fiery King was anxious. "I'm sorry, big brother Fiery King. This matter concerns a few secrets of mine and it is inconvenient for me to tell you. You only need to send me back to the lineage of Star. At that time, Hall Master Yuan and the rest of the people will help me to resolve this matter," Jian Wushuang said apologetically. "All right," the Fiery King nodded his head and he did not mind. After all, everyone has secrets. Moreover, some secrets were extremely crazy. Hence, he would naturally not get to the bottom of Jian Wushuang's secrets. The Fiery King took out an airship from the outside world. After that, he began his journey to send Jian Wushuang back to the lineage of Star from the Jianghu Holy Kingdom. It took tens of years to return to the lineage of Star. However, even though tens of years had passed, Jian Wushuang still did not get any better. At the lineage of Star, inside a cave that was built with special gems. As Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao looked in front of them at the white-haired Jian Wushuang who looked like an old man, their eyes squinted slightly. If not for the special life aura of Jian Wushuang based on looks alone, they would not expect the person in front of them to actually be Jian Wushuang. "Fiery King, thank you for sending Jian Wushuang back this time around. I will make sure that Jian Wushuang remembers this favor," Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang and I belong to the same lineage. Moreover, he has rescued me from the Sky Sword prison and I am extremely grateful to him for this. Hence, I ought to send him back and there's nothing with regards to owing or returning favors. Now, the most important thing is his current state. I hope that your lineage of Star is able to think of a way to get him to recover quickly, the fiery king said. Don't worry. You can leave this matter to the lineage of Star, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. The fiery king nodded his head, took a look at Jian Wushuang seriously and left soon after. Inside the cave, only Hall Master Yuan, Lei Chao and Jian Wushuang were left. Jian Wushuang, for you to be in this state, could it be? Hall Master Yuan frowned and stared at Jian Wushuang. The inverse cultivation test for the third heaven. Jian Wushuang raised his head and said. I was right. Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao looked at each other. They knew that since Jian Wushuang's current state was not caused by other people, the only other possibility was the inverse cultivation test. What's wrong with your inverse cultivation test this time around? Hall Master Yuan questioned. I am not sure either, Jian Wushuang shook his head. Previously, after I came out of Wu Bei's cave, my abilities were already very close to their peak. Under normal circumstances, when my abilities reached such a level, the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven should have descended. Hence, I intentionally stayed within the lineage of Star to wait for the arrival of the inverse cultivation test. After waiting for a total of 1,800 years which caused my abilities in every area to reach its peak, the inverse cultivation test did not show any signs of descending at all. However, this time around, after I received the news from the Vientiane Tower, I set off to the Jianghu Holy Kingdom to capture Leng Zunzhu alive. At the start it was still quite smooth. However, at the most critical moment where I was in an intense battle with someone, the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven descended without any warning. It descended abruptly? Hall Master Yuan was stunned. There were actually no warnings at all? Lei Chao was also shocked. For the God's test of a normal universe God, there would be some warnings given when it was about to descend so that the universe God could catch the warning and know when the God's test would descend clearly. This would then allow them to have sufficient time to make preparations. This was what had happened to many cultivators. As for inverse cultivators, although they were different from the rest, during the previous 2 inverse cultivation tests, they had also given Jian Wushuang ample time to prepare. However, this time, which was the third time, there were no warnings. Hence, there was no time to make any preparations. Back then I was stunned as well. After all, I was in a close-quarters fight with a void real God. As soon as the inverse cultivation test descended, my divine power started to weaken speedily. Jian Wushuang's old face turned grave. It's not only my divine power. Even my soul power, my comprehension toward the heaven way as well as all the secret skills that I learnt all began to weaken. Now, not even the slightest bit of my divine power and soul power remain. This is the same for my comprehension toward the heaven way. Hence, it can be said that the current me has been reduced to a normal person. During the journey back here, I tried to gather my divine power and also comprehend the heaven way. However, there was no effect at all. Furthermore, this inverse cultivation test has also caused my body to change. My body has become like a normal person's and my hair has turned white naturally. With that, I became lifeless, which is my current state now. I also had an impression that I would live every day with no thought of tomorrow. Live every day with no thought of tomorrow? Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao became stupefied. Jian Wushuang was originally an extremely powerful and an exceptional genius who could compete against a peak void real God. However, in the blink of an eye, he had been reduced to a normal old man who had no power at all and could only live day to day with no thought of tomorrow. This was the inverse cultivation test of the third heaven? Chapter 1560 Senior Wushuang? Chapter 1560 Senior Wushuang? Jian Wushuang, have you already passed inverse cultivation test or are you still in the process of the test? Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows as he asked. Should be still in the process of the test, Jian Wushuang replied, and I can feel that my third inverse cultivation test will be much longer than the 2 previous inverse cultivation tests. In other words, my current state will remain for quite some time. How much longer? Hall Master Yuan asked. I don't know, Jian Wushuang shook his head. He knew that he was passing through the test and the test would take very long but he couldn't determine just how long exactly it would last for. Such a strange test, I have never heard about it before. This is troublesome, Hall Master Yuan said in a deep voice. Really troublesome. Even with Jian Wushuang's mental state, he could feel a faint helplessness. One should know that ever since he started cultivation, he had only relied on his own power. With his power he was confident. Even if he were to run into strong enemies, he would figure out a way to grow in an unfavorable environment. But then his power was non-existent. Regardless, as your inverse cultivation test has descended, everything that is meant to happen is going to happen. Plus, I can only rely on myself to go through this inverse cultivation test. No one else can help me with it. I will endure everything on my own. Very soon Jian Wushuang had left the cave dwelling and walked towards his sword star. As for Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao, they went to search for ancient books to see if they could find any solution. In Lineage of Star, among the rolling palaces, Jian Wushuang, who was hoary-looking with gray hair, was slowly walking forward. His footsteps were very slow. After all, not only did he become a commoner, he became a gray-haired elderly. He didn't possess any power. To him, every step that he took was difficult too. On the way he naturally ran into many disciples of Lineage of Star. When the disciples of Lineage of Star saw Jian Wushuang, they were shocked. Who is this person? Who would he carry the token of Disciples of Star Palace on him? Disciples of Star Palace? Impossible. I've never seen him. Plus, this person didn't seem to have any fluctuations of divine power. Commoner? Really? At first, the disciples didn't even recognize Jian Wushuang but were only suspicious about why Jian Wushuang was carrying the token of Disciples of Star Palace. But very soon. This person, he looks like Senior Wushuang. What nonsense are you talking about? Senior Wushuang is such an amazing genius. How could he be related to this old man that doesn't even have any fluctuations of divine power? But his life aura is exactly the same as Senior Wushuang's. I've seen Senior Wushuang before, that's why I'm familiar with Senior Wushuang's life aura. It's really Senior Wushuang's life aura? A person's facial features and body could change but his life aura would never change. The disciples saw Jian Wushuang but couldn't recognize him. Whoever had seen him before could recognize his life aura though. Senior Wushuang, how come he changed like that? This is clearly an old man who is dying. How could it be the Senior Wushuang I adore? I don't believe this, I won't believe this. Impossible. Senior Wushuang is so amazing. It's impossible that he would change like this. Many disciples roared angrily and were not willing to believe what they saw. They followed Jian Wushuang. When they saw Jian Wushuang walk toward Sword Star and Qiu Yu, who was the leader among the maidservants in Sword Star, escort and help him personally to get into Sword Star, the disciples of Lineage of Star finally believed it. The old man who looked like he was going to die at any time was Jian Wushuang. On that day itself, Hall Master Yuan announced personally that when Jian Wushuang was wandering outside, someone had plotted against him and he had gotten poisoned. Hence, he had lost all his power and he couldn't recover in a short period of time. The moment the announcement was made, the entire Lineage of Star shook and everyone was bubbling over. On Sword Star, Jian Wushuang sat down on a chair slowly. Qiu Yu and the other maidservants stood there politely and they obviously looked concerned. Especially Qiu Yu. Mister, what has happened to you? Qiu Yu asked anxiously. Don't worry, I'm okay. I'll recover in no time. As for the rumors outside, don't worry about it, Jian Wushuang said. Although Jian Wushuang said so, Qiu Yu was still very worried. Jian Wushuang didn't say much but came to the secret room where he cultivated in seclusion on Sword Start. He sat down in the secret room but his face looked solemn. Although he had behaved at ease before Hall Master Yuan, Qiu Yu and the others, in actual fact, he was even more worried than anyone else. I cultivated over the years, went through so much training, fought life and death battles in exchange for my power. It vanished just like that. And, of all times, it happens to be when I got to see Leng Wuxia and when I desired power the most. It just suddenly descended. This inverse cultivation test, what is going on? Jian Wushuang roared in the bottom of his head and his hoary face grew red. Jian Wushuang, don't get too emotional. You must steady your mind. King of Venomous Worm's voice suddenly rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Don't forget about real God Wu Bei and Wu Bei's cave. Huh? Jian Wushuang looked surprised. Real God Wu Bei. Back when Jian Wushuang had asked Real God Wu Bei about the third inverse cultivation test, Real God Wu Bei had never said clearly but he did mention that his drastic change of disposition was due to his experience of his third inverse cultivation test. The other almighties referred to him as a madman. The third inverse cultivation test that Real God Wu Bei had experienced should be the same as the one he was in. Real God Wu Bei could become an inverse cultivator of real God level, and his power could be compared favorably with an almighty's. He naturally was an impressive figure. However, even he had a drastic change in disposition after he passed through the third inverse cultivation test. While you are in the midst of the test, if you were to act recklessly, you might turn out like real God Wu Bei. Plus, this is a really decent situation. Don't forget, the third inverse cultivation is your biggest test. This test is definitely much more strict than the others. King of Venomous Worms roared. Jian Wushuang felt his chest tighten. He kept quiet for a while and finally let out a breath of relief. I misbehaved. Jian Wushuang calmed down. Anyone who experiences what you're encountering would misbehave or even go mad. It's normal. But you have to steady your mind. Don't get flustered. Otherwise, you might be doomed forever, King of Venomous Worms exhorted. I know, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. He understood it well. Oh yeah, King of Venomous Worms, since I became like this, what effect does it have on you as my parasitic beast? Chapter 1561, The Collapse of the Sacred Altar and Falling to Rock Bottom. Chapter 1561, The Collapse of the Sacred Altar and Falling to Rock Bottom. Humph, thanks to your inverse cultivation test, I have returned to a newborn state, the King of Venomous Worms complained. Newborn state? Which is equivalent to a newborn human baby? Jian Wushuang was stunned. That's right. If you were to fight with someone now, don't hope for me to help you recover your divine power. The King of Venomous Worms was obviously not happy. In my current state, how could I fight anyone? Perhaps even a random universe god could kill me easily. Jian Wushuang forced a smile. However, it was obvious that his mood had become slightly better. During the next period of time, Jian Wushuang stayed at the Sword Star quietly and lived the life of a normal person. As for the news of Jian Wushuang being poisoned by a potent poison and losing his abilities completely, it spread quickly within the 10 cultivation sanctuaries like a storm. Countless experts within the 10 cultivation sanctuaries were shocked by the news. Especially the experts on the Universe God ranking list. No one had expected Jian Wushuang, who had displayed his impressive talents in Wu Bei's cave not long ago and was thus recognized by experts everywhere as one of the top geniuses by the eternal chaotic world, to actually experience such a change abruptly. This had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. After getting to know such news, some people sighed emotionally, some people gasped in surprise, and some people pitied him. However, there were of course people who were delighted at his misfortune. For example, Zidongwang, who was ranked 4th in the Universe God ranking list. When he knew about Jian Wushuang's change, he laughed delightfully. Poisoned by a potent poison, lost all his abilities and is even inferior to a normal person. Ha, Jian Wushuang, I didn't expect you to end up like this one day. Humph, it's best for you to stay in this state forever. Back then, Zidongwang had suffered greatly due to Jian Wushuang. As such, he naturally hated Jian Wushuang. Apart from people like Zidongwang who hated Jian Wushuang, there were also people who had good relations with Jian Wushuang. For example, Duan Lingfeng had sent a message at once to ask him how he was doing. To the people who were concerned about him, Jian Wushuang had an easygoing look and he said that he was all right. However, everyone knew without a doubt that his condition was not looking good and Jian Wushuang was hanging on with all his might. Time passed by. In the blink of an eye, 3,000 years passed. Under a big tree at the Sword Star, 4 shadows sat together. Among the 4 people apart from Jian Wushuang there was Ling Feibai, Longya and Xian Yi. The 3 of them had some form of friendship with Jian Wushuang and for the past few years, they came to the Sword Star occasionally to meet Jian Wushuang. As for whether Jian Wushuang possessed the same abilities in the past, they were not concerned about it. Jian Wushuang, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is about to begin in a few days' time. Ling Feibai looked at Jian Wushuang and said, The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace? Jian Wushuang's expression changed and he laughed nonchalantly soon after. Time really passes very fast. Another 5,000 years have passed in the blink of an eye. He remembered that before Wu Bei's cave opened, Lineage of Star had just held a battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Up to the very moment he felt that 5,000 years' time had passed in just a split second. I am not participating in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace this time around, Jian Wushuang said. Not participating? Ling Feibai, Longya and Xian Yi who were beside one another looked at one another. After that they nodded their heads. All of them knew that the abilities of Jian Wushuang had not recovered at all. Hence, at his current state, he could not participate in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Moreover, rumors of it being impossible for Jian Wushuang to recover had already spread through the lineage of Star a long time ago. After all, a total of 3,000 years had passed. By his logic, if his abilities could recover, they already should have. However, at that very moment, there were still no signs of him recovering. Thus, this caused over 70 to 80% of disciples and experts of the lineage of Star to think that it would be impossible for Jian Wushuang to ever recover. As for the remaining people, they were disciples who worshipped Jian Wushuang's previous fighting achievements blindly, and they still believed firmly that there would come a day when Jian Wushuang would recover. However, after many days, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace was held. After Jian Wushuang forfeited, those disciples' final belief disappeared gradually. Everyone believed that the legend created by Jian Wushuang, where the sacred altar that he was carried to by countless universe god experts due to his impressive abilities in Wu Bei's cave, had collapsed. Since the sacred altar had collapsed, Jian Wushuang had fallen to rock bottom. There was probably no chance of him struggling in the future. Even the Vientiane Tower had removed Jian Wushuang's name from the newest universe god ranking list. 3,000 years ago, he had been a genius who was talked about enthusiastically by numerous experts in the eternal chaotic world. However, at that very moment he had become a topic that the experts sighed about occasionally. Even within lineage of Star, there were also people who had been dissatisfied with Jian Wushuang. After all, in the lineage of Star, one had to be in the top 5 in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace to be recognized as a Star Palace disciple. During the most recent battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, Jian Wushuang had forfeited straight away. On principle, he should be reduced to a normal disciple. However, in actual fact, the lineage of Star had kept his position as a Star Palace disciple. Therefore, he still had the right to obtain a great amount of resources that would be available to Star Palace disciples. For example, the Sword Star, as well as its maids, were the privileges of a Star Palace disciple, and Jian Wushuang still had them to himself. This had naturally caused quite a number of people to be envious of him. Even so, they were pushed back by Hall Master Yuan forcefully. Inside a secret room within the Sword Star. 3,000 years have passed. The inverse cultivation test of the third heaven had gone on for a total of 3,000 years. In spite of that, I feel that this test is still far from completion. Jian Wushuang was sitting down with his legs crossed in his position, and he was getting a feel for his own body. The Jian Wushuang of that very moment was still no different from a normal person. He still had white hair and an old look as if he could die any moment. There are still many years ahead of me, and I cannot stay at the Sword Star all the time. If not, my mind will definitely collapse and I will go crazy, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He was very certain of how much he had suffered over the past 3,000 years. If not for his mind being exceptionally strong and having reached the peak of the first level, he would have broken down a long time ago. If it were other people, even if they were real gods, they would definitely go crazy during the 3,000 years. Losing all his abilities abruptly, falling from a sacred altar to rock bottom, and being reduced to a normal person abruptly. This was just like a monarch who had stood at the top becoming a beggar overnight. Moreover, it was a beggar who could not see any hope or light. Was this something that a normal person could bear? Moreover, it was not known how long such a situation would continue for. If Jian Wushuang were to stay in the lineage of Star all the time, he would not be able to take it either. Thus, he contacted Hall Master Yuan at once. Hall Master Yuan, I wish to go out to take a walk. Jian Wushuang spoke of his own intentions straight away. Yes, it's about time for you to go outside and take a walk, Hall Master Yuan agreed as well. Tell me, where do you want to go? I am only a normal person now, and it is impossible for me to travel within the eternal chaotic world. Hall Master Yuan, do you know of any place that normal people live? Jian Wushuang asked. Chapter 1562 Qing Tian Mystery Land. Chapter 1562, Qing Tian Mystery Land. Mortal World. Hall Master Yuan thought for a while and said, in eternal chaotic world, power is the most important thing. The moment a human is born, their main focus is to cultivate. No matter in which eternal world, it isn't easy to find an immortal world. However, I do know of a mystery land. Although there are many cultivators, there's also a place for commoners. The name of the mystery land is Qing Tian Mystery Land. It's under the control of Green Feather Pavilion. Green Feather Pavilion is within Star Land. If you'd like to go to the mystery land, let me arrange it for you. Sorry for the trouble, Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Then Jian Wushuang called for Qiuyu. Mr. Qiuyu appeared before Jian Wushuang and greeted. In the past 3,000 years, the attitudes of many disciples and lineage of Star did change drastically. However, Qiuyu and the other maidservants still respected him as before. I want to head over to Green Feather Pavilion. Give me a lift, Jian Wushuang said. Although Green Feather Pavilion was within Star Land, it was still quite a distance from lineage of Star. To Jian Wushuang, who was only a commoner, it was too far. He naturally needed to count on Qiuyu. Qiuyu naturally agreed instantly. Very soon the two of them departed. Qiuyu escorted Jian Wushuang and they arrived before the entrance of Green Feather Pavilion very soon. Please help us to inform them that the disciple of lineage of Star Jian Wushuang is here to visit. Qiuyu looked at the disciple guarding Green Feather Pavilion and said, Disciple of lineage of Star? The few disciples who were guarding were shocked. One of them looked at Qiuyu and asked, Are you the disciple of lineage of Star? Do you have the disciple token? I'm not. The one behind me is, Qiuyu answered. Him? You're just kidding, right? The few disciples looked at Jian Wushuang with a strange look and one even scoffed at the sight. They could obviously tell that Jian Wushuang was a commoner without any fluctuation of divine power. How could such a person be a disciple of lineage of Star, which was highly respectable? This is the disciple token. You don't have to ask so many questions, just go ahead and report, Qiuyu said in a low voice. After the few guarding disciples determined that the token was genuine, they didn't delay any further but went to report immediately. Very soon, Master of Green Feather Pavilion and a few real gods came to greet him personally. When they saw Jian Wushuang, Master of Green Feather Pavilion, and the few real gods were shocked at the sight. I heard that the genius and lineage of Star was schemed upon. Then he lost all his power and became a disabled person. From the looks of it, it is true indeed, Master of Green Feather Pavilion muttered to himself and invited Jian Wushuang in. After all, Hall Master Yuan had already gotten in touch with him regarding that. In Green Feather Pavilion, Jian Wushuang walked behind Master of Green Feather Pavilion. He walked very slowly. This is the Jian Wushuang who was once in the 3rd place on Universe God ranking list? How did he become like this? It's really him. I heard that he was poisoned. I also heard that he made a mistake as he was cultivating, which led to the loss of his power. In short, he is simply a disabled person. If someone takes action against him, they could easily kill him. From a top genius to a disabled person, things are unpredictable. Oh yeah, why did he come to Green Feather Pavilion? I heard that he's going to Qing Tian Mystery Land. There are commoners living there. This man, who was once a top genius, I'm afraid he might have to stay in Qing Tian Mystery Land forever. There might be a place that can contain him. On the way, Jian Wushuang ran into many disciples in Green Feather Pavilion. The conversation that the disciples were having then, Jian Wushuang couldn't hear them at all, but Qiuyu could. There was rage churning in her eyes, but she suppressed it. Soon they arrived before a space tunnel that had already activated. Jian Wushuang, this space tunnel leads to Qing Tian Mystery Land, Master of Green Feather Pavilion smiled. Thank you, Jian Wushuang thanked Master of Green Feather Pavilion and turned around. Qiuyu, here will do. You can return now. Mr. Qiuyu was shocked. Although there are many commoners living in Qing Tian Mystery Land, there are also many cultivators gathered there. It is very dangerous. How can you wander around alone? I'd better follow you and protect you. You don't need to. I want to walk around alone, Jian Wushuang waved his hand. But, Qiuyu wanted to say something. Don't worry. Qing Tian Mystery Land is within Green Feather Pavilion's control. We Green Feather Pavilion naturally have to protect Jian Wushuang, Master of Green Feather Pavilion smiled. Qiuyu's eyebrows were still tightly knitted. Go. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and his figure slowly moved forward. Then he took a leap into the space tunnel. Then Qiuyu had no choice but to leave. Elder Ming Ba, Master of Green Feather Pavilion spoke. Pavilion Master, an elderly in a black robe walked forward. Although Jian Wushuang is a disabled person, he's a disciple of lineage of Star after all. The higher-ups in lineage of Star seem to have yet to give him up. As he came to Mystery Land under Green Feather Pavilion's control, we, Green Feather Pavilion, have to ensure his safety. Hence, you have to go to Qing Tian Mystery Land personally and follow him all the time. Don't let him die. Master of Green Feather Pavilion's voice was cold. Of course, you only have to ensure that he doesn't die. The rest don't bother. I understand, Elder Mingba nodded, then immediately went into the space tunnel. Qing Tian Mystery Land. It was a mystery land of an extremely low level. The territory of the mystery land was extremely populated, but the number of cultivators was only 10%. The other 90% was just commoners. Different from Eternal Chaotic World, the moment the person fought, he would be listed as a cultivator. But there was only differences of strength. Rolling hills at the depth of the mountain in a forest. There was a young boy who looked only 8 to 9 years old, extremely honest and simple. He was hitting a wooden block before him with his bare shoulders. The wooden block was extremely thick. It must have been left by adult cultivators. Although the young boy gave his all by swinging simple punches and slaps on the wood block, it didn't move an inch. But the young boy was very persistent. He trained there for more than an hour and was drenched in his own sweat before stopped. The young man panted in order to slow down his heartbeat and breathing while his eyes were twinkling with determination that a boy of his age didn't usually have. For my mom and Xiao Qiu, I must become a warrior. I must. The young boy clenched his fists. Just then. Chapter 1563, A Celestial Being Descends. Chapter 1563, A Celestial Being Descends. Buzz. A dazzling light appeared from a tree abruptly. The light was too dazzling, and it was definitely the brightest light that the young man had ever seen. When the light glowed, a white-haired old man appeared in the young man's line of vision. Could this be the celestial being that Mother mentioned? The young man stared. At the next moment, the young man ran in front of the white-haired old man. "Old mister, are you a celestial being?" The young man raised his head and looked at the white-haired old man. His face was filled with excitement. A celestial being? Jian Wushuang looked at the little kid in front of him with interest. After seeing his bright, big eyes, he was delighted. If he were at his peak with his abilities, one could say that he was a god in the Qing Tian Mystery Land. However, at the very moment he was only a normal person. "I am not a celestial being. I am just a person passing by this area," Jian Wushuang laughed. "You're lying. I have never seen such a bright light before. Moreover, you walked out of the light. Hence, you must be a celestial being," the young man said insistently. "Ah. If you wish to think of it that way, then I am a celestial being," Jian Wushuang giggled and looked down. "Little kid, what's your name?" "I am Qin from the Qin family village. The people in the village call me Hu Zi," the young man said. "Qin family village?" Jian Wushuang's expression changed. "My village is at the foot of this mountain. Old celestial being, do you want me to bring you there?" The young man Qin said. "Sure, I will take a look," Jian Wushuang laughed. Under Qin guidance, Jian Wushuang walked toward the village at the foot of the mountain. It was an ordinary, simple village. Jian Wushuang came to a bamboo house in the village. Within the bamboo house, there was a middle-aged, married woman as well as a 4 to 5-year-old small little girl with a ponytail. "Mother, I met an old celestial being today and I have brought him with me," Qin ran in front of the middle-aged married woman excitedly. The middle-aged old man caressed Qin head and looked at Jian Wushuang at once. After that, she said with embarrassment, "I'm sorry, old mister. This little kid is not sensible." "You are?" "I'm just a traveler passing by this area. As for my name, I'm Wu Qin." Jian Wushuang chuckled. Wuxia. Walking in a world and not leaving behind any dust or mark. This was what Jian Wushuang wanted. "Mr. Wu Qin, you are traveling at the big mountain alone? Aren't you scared of the mountain bandits?" Qin mother asked. "Mountain bandits?" Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. "Yes, this mountain is very huge and there are more than 100 villages like our Qin family village. Of course, there is also quite a number of mountain bandits within the big mountain. These mountain bandits will rob anyone throughout the year. If someone were to not give them money, he would suffer under their hands. Also, Hu Zi's father died in their hands," Qin mother said. "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang nodded his head slightly. "Let's not talk about this. The sun has already set. If I'm not wrong, old mister, you have not taken your meal yet, right? I have just finished preparing our meal and you can join us if you want." Qin mother laughed and invited Jian Wushuang at the same time. "Eat." Jian Wushuang had a puzzled expression. 4 cultivators, spiritual energy in the universe served as their food. On ordinary days they would at most have the luck to eat a few special fruits or a few special good foods that were delicious. As for eating to fill the stomach, Jian Wushuang had not done it ever since he became a cultivator. "I gratefully accept." Jian Wushuang laughed and accepted the invitation. plain tea and simple food. However, Jian Wushuang ate it with great relish. After the meal, it was night time and a bright moon was high up in the sky. Jian Wushuang sat at a spot halfway up the big mountain and looked down at the brightly lit, peaceful village which was below him. Compared to cultivators, ordinary humans are indeed weak, and it would not be an understatement to call them ants. However, cultivators have their own benefits and ordinary humans have their own benefits. At the very least, among the cultivators, not many of them can live such a peaceful life. With a smile, Jian Wushuang closed his eyes. One night passed. Early in the morning, at the crack of dawn, the peaceful village was already very lively. Many men of the village had appeared at the average-sized drill ground at the center of the village. They then took out their own weapons to train. Moreover, most of them trained with long spears. However, most of their spears were wooden long spears and only a few people possessed metal spears. Jian Wushuang also went to the drill ground to take a look at the different spear skills that the people were training. Their spear skills were the simplest front stabs, carrying the spears and walking for a long distance as well as swinging the spears around. Although it was ordinary, they could unleash a considerable amount of power if they were to practice continuously. The pitiful thing was that the people within the Qin family village were all ordinary people. Thus, they were using the strength of a normal person. The strongest person could only lift a weight of 100 Jian at maximum. Moreover, there was not even a martial artist. 8-year-old Qin, who was also holding a wooden spear that was taller than him, and he was practicing with the adults. His eyes were very determined. Although he was young, his spear skills were executed amazingly with impressive strength. After a long time, the collective training ended and next was individual training. Huzi, come over here, Jian Wushuang waved. Huzi carried the long spear and ran over. Old mister, what's wrong? After one night, Qin, who knew that Jian Wushuang was not an old celestial being. However, he still treated Jian Wushuang with respect. You like to use a spear? Jian Wushuang looked at Qin Hu and asked. Yes. Not only me but most of the people in the village like to use spears. For example, my father also used to use a spear. Moreover, his spear skills were remarkable, Qin Hu said. How remarkable? Jian Wushuang questioned. Not many people in the village could compete with him, Qin Hu revealed a proud expression. However, his expression changed after that. Old mister, do you know spear skills? Yes. After muttering to himself for some time, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. I know quite a few. Jian Wushuang was speaking the truth. Although he had only trained in sword principles, he also had some understanding of the other weapons. The only problem was that he was not proficient in them. However, with his realm, even a small understanding would be at the level of a sect master in the Qing Tian mystery land. Old mister, you really know of spear skills? Qin Hu was delighted and his voice attracted the attention of quite a number of people around him. A number of the villagers then walked over to him. Mr. Qin Hu, you know of spear skills. Could you be a martial artist? The villagers also knew that Jian Wushuang was a traveler who had just happened to pass by and his name was Wu Qin. After seeing the villagers walking over, Jian Wushuang smiled. I am not a martial artist. However, I know of some spear skills. That's great. Old mister, could you help me to see this spear that I made myself? A tough, stocky man asked delightedly. After that, he immediately executed the 3-move spear skill in front of Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1564 Mounted Gangster. Chapter 1564 Mounted Gangster. After he performed a 3-move spear skill in outstanding manner, the surrounding people were astonished. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and said, Your spear skill is shabby still. There are many places for improvement. Let me give you a few pointers. Jian Wushuang advised sincerely. Although his power had already vanished, his knowledge and experience regarding weapons were still there. After giving pointers, the powerfully built man suddenly saw the light and had a great harvest. Old Mr. Wu Qin, please take a look at my spear skill. The people in the village asked Jian Wushuang for pointers. The people in the village resided in the deep mountain and they had no chance to meet any experts. Sometimes there were 1 or 2 warriors who would pass by, but who would bother with them? Then they finally got to meet Jian Wushuang and had found out that he knew so much about spear skills. Of course, they couldn't wait to ask for pointers and also ask him their questions. Jian Wushuang was happy to teach too. He even intentionally taught the people in the village a spear skill. It was an unqualified spear skill that he had obtained back when he had first started to wander in eternal chaotic world, but to the people in Qin village, it was like getting a treasure. Later on, the people in the village would practice this spear skill early in the morning. If they were to run into a problem that they didn't understand, they would ask Jian Wushuang. Hence, Jian Wushuang was highly respected by the people in the village. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had stayed in the village for more than half a month. At the battlefield in the village, Jian Wushuang stood in a corner while Qin Hu's sister sat by his side. She was only a little girl at the age of 4 with 2 braids, Qin Qiu. On the battlefield, everyone in Qin village was going for a battle. The battle was categorized according to age. Qin Hu won first place among the kids at the age of 8. Brother got first place again. He's so amazing. The little girl saw that Qin Hu had won the first place and she was dancing in excitement. Your brother is not amazing, but he is hardworking enough and he is willing to train assiduously. Brother will definitely become a warrior in the future and I want to be like him too, the little girl said with her childish voice. Jian Wushuang smiled. Just then, dang dang. The ground suddenly shook vigorously. Clatter of horses' hooves? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Oh no, it's a mounted gangster. The mounted gangsters are here. Along with the scream, the entire village was suddenly in chaos. Hurry up, hurry up. A large number of adult men in the village took out their metal or wooden long spears and rushed to the battlefield. Before everyone gathered at the battlefield, bang. A loud bang and the door of the village was pushed open forcefully. Then, a troop of almost 100 men barged into the village. Ha Qin village, we are here to collect the yearly fees. A bright and loud laugh rang through the entire village. Yearly fees? Misters, haven't we handed in the yearly fees? An elderly in the village asked. Humph, you paid the yearly fees to ruffian gang. You have yet to pay to Baisha gang. Hurry up and pay. You have to pay us twice what you paid to ruffian gang. A man with a scar on his face who was leading the mounted gangsters bellowed. What? The elderly exclaimed in surprise. Twice? How can Qin village afford it? You can't afford it? Humph, don't blame us then. Brothers, attack. Kill all the men and catch all the beautiful women, the leader of the mounted gangsters roared. Suddenly the mounted gangsters were like strong wind. They instantly started a massacre. Everyone in Qin village was raging with anger. Bastard. Fight with them. Kill them. Let them know to not push the men in Qin village the wrong way. The people in Qin village took their weapons and fought against the mounted gangster. They were born in the depths of the mountain, surrounded by the mounted gangsters. They practiced their spear skills every day to improve their strengths in order to deal with the mounted gangsters. It was time for them to counterattack. However, the people in Qin village used weapons that were coarsely made and most of them were made of wood. However, those gangsters were on their war horses and using metal weapons. There were sabers, axes, long spears and so on. Plus, among the mounted gangsters there were quite a few warriors. Although there weren't as many of them as there were people in Qin village, the fight was dominated by them. Most of the people in Qin village were killed by the mounted gangsters directly. Damn it. On the battlefield, Qin Fu, who was still scrawny and small, saw the scene and his eyes grew red. He carried the long spear in his hand and wanted to charge forward to fight against the mounted gangster. But he moved and he was immediately grabbed by Jian Wushuang. Huzi, don't be silly. Hurry up, bring your sister and your mom into the house to hide. What's happening here isn't something children and women can interfere with, Jian Wushuang said. But old Mr. Qin Hu wanted to say something. Hurry up. Jian Wushuang suddenly bellowed. Qin Hu clenched his teeth. Then he immediately pulled Qin Qiu, who was frightened and as pale as a sheet, and ran into the house. While Jian Wushuang stood on the battlefield and watched the massacre before him, there was suddenly a long sword in his hand. The sword was just an ordinary sword. He had no divine power then, he couldn't activate Blood Mountain Sword. He carried a variety of treasures in his hand, like some tokens that contained attack power. Those tokens could easily exterminate the mounted gangster before him the moment it was activated. However, the tokens required divine power to be activated too. Hence he couldn't use them. But the only thing that he could use was an ordinary and at best very sharp sword. Jian Wushuang took a stride forward and entered the battlefield. Just as he leapt, he wielded his sword and instantly stabbed it through a mounted gangster's throat. Then he flicked and stabbed another mounted gangster's eyes. Then Jian Wushuang landed on the ground. The moment he landed, he staggered and fell. Damn. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. He was a dying old man and his strength was far behind an ordinary adult's. He possessed great swordsmanship, but he couldn't give full play to it. Just then he only moved a little and he felt his strenuous. If he were to be slightly strong like an ordinary adult man, even without the assistance of sword intention, his origins and doctrines, but with the simplest swordsmanship, he was confident he could kill all of the mounted gangster before him. What could he do? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Jian Wushuang tried his best to walk around the crowd. As he walked through one round, he killed 4 mounted gangsters. One was blinded and the other one got his arm chopped off. But then he was also panting. Where did this old man come from? Take this. Chapter 1565, Powerless. Chapter 1565, Powerless. Where did this old bastard come from? Eat my hammer attack. A fierce shout could be heard. It was from the leader of the mountain bandits and he was swinging a giant iron hammer around. He then jumped off from the horse and immediately headed toward Jian Wushuang violently. The leader of the mountain bandits was a true martial artist with remarkable abilities. Jian Wushuang could not dodge in time and he could only use his sword to defend himself. In the end, bam! A loud clashing sound could be heard and the long sword in Jian Wushuang's hands was sent flying. At the same time, he felt that the skeleton of his body was about to break into pieces from the impact. In addition, he also spit out a big mouthful of blood and his body retreated continuously. It was only after retreating a total of 10 steps that he managed to regain his posture. However, what followed after that was a tired feeling and his body fell backwards involuntarily. In the instant he fell down, he saw that some mountain bandits had charged into the bamboo house that Jianghu and his family were in. No! Jian Wushuang roared madly in his mind. It was a furious roar as he felt a dissatisfaction that he had never felt before. However, he could not do anything as his body could no longer take it at that moment. Even his consciousness went into a deep sleep slowly. Jian Wushuang's consciousness finally woke up after an unknown period of time. As soon as he woke up, he felt the extreme pain from his body. After that, he saw everything in the surrounding area and it was too tragic to look. The whole Qin family village had become a pool of blood. Jian Wushuang stood up slowly. Everywhere he looked there were pools of blood and a great amount of bodies strewn around randomly. These bodies were the clansmen of the Qin family village. The Qin family village was gone. The whole village had been massacred. Why did this happen? Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and his old face started to become distorted. What a great village it had been that many people had yearned for. What honest clansmen there had been. The day before it was still a peaceful village. In the blink of an eye, it had become a sea of blood. Moreover, everything happened in front of Jian Wushuang. However, he was unable to stop it. Powerless. It was the first time that Jian Wushuang felt so powerless. From the start of his training until that very moment, he had also experienced numerous thresholds and hardships. However, he had never felt as powerless as he was at the very moment. Without any abilities, he was just a normal person. He could only look on as the villagers were completely massacred by the mountain bandits. At the very moment, Jian Wushuang's heart was filled with rage and even his body was trembling madly. However, his expression changed abruptly. Hu Zi. Jian Wushuang headed to Jianghu's house, the bamboo house, immediately. After entering the bamboo house and witnessing the scene inside, Jian Wushuang was stunned. Within the bamboo house, Jianghu, Qinqiu and Jianghu's mother were all lying in a pool of blood. In particular, Jianghu's mother was still hugging both Jianghu and Qinqiu tightly. Jian Wushuang squatted down slowly and loosened Jianghu's mother's hands while suppressing the shaking in his heart. Jian Wushuang's eyes moved. He could feel Jianghu's breath. He was still breathing slightly. There's still hope. Jian Wushuang took out an elixir from his Chen Kuan ring immediately. Although he had lost all his abilities, his treasures were still with him. He did not have any treasures to bring the dead back to life with. However, as long as there was still breath, he could bring Jianghu back to life. After the elixir had entered Jianghu's body, he recovered from his condition immediately. In just a short amount of time he opened his eyes. However, when he opened his eyes and saw the scene in front of him, he became stupefied. Straight away after that. Mother. Xiao Qiu. No, no. Jianghu shouted continuously and tears came out of his eyes immediately. Jian Wushuang frowned as he saw this. After that, he took a deep breath and said seriously, Hu Zi, let me ask you, do you wish to take revenge? Take revenge. Jianghu was stunned but he clenched both his fists tightly. I wish to. Of course I wish to take revenge. I wish to kill that group of bandits completely and not leave even a single one of them alive. If you wish to take revenge, wipe away your tears. From today on you shall follow me, Jian Wushuang said. Understood, Jianghu nodded his head without thinking. At the same time he used both his hands to wipe his tears. Let's go. We should bury your mother and little sister. Together, Jian Wushuang and Jianghu brought the bodies of Jianghu's mother and Jianqiu to the back of the mountain, which was the forest in which Jianghu had seen Jian Wushuang for the first time. Now wait for me for a while. After Jian Wushuang had finished talking, he returned back to the Qin family village. As he stood in the pool of blood at the Qin family village, Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked toward the empty sky. I know that there should be an expert of the green feather pavilion nearby. Although I don't know whether you are a universe god or real god. Jian Wushuang took out a Qian Kuan ring with a wave of his hand. Inside this Qian Kuan ring, there are 10 million chaos gems. I hope that you can help me to bury the villagers of the Qin family village properly. Jian Wushuang placed the Qian Kuan ring above a stone and left after that. Not long after Jian Wushuang had left. Swoosh! A shadow descended abruptly, appeared beside the Qian Kuan ring and took it. This person was naturally Elder Ming Ba of the Green Feather Pavilion. Elder Ming Ba had remained hidden all the while. His duty was to not allow Jian Wushuang to die in the Sky Blue Mystery Land. As for what Jian Wushuang had experienced within the Mystery Land, he did not care about it. For example, Ming Ba was not concerned about the massacre that the Qin family village had experienced in the slightest. A group of commoners was only a group of ants. Therefore they were not worthy enough for him to take action. Moreover, he would not participate in the fight between the commoners. Although Jian Wushuang was seriously injured, as long as he was not dead, Elder Ming Ba would not take action. Jian Wushuang had paid the price of 10 million chaos gems to get him to give the village a proper burial. Thus he appeared at that very moment. Then, in accordance to Jian Wushuang's request, he buried the villagers of the Qin family village. At the back of the mountain inside the forest. Even though Jian Wushuang and Jianghu had teamed up, they still spent many hours burying Jianghu's mother and Jianqiu properly. Huzi, from today on, you shall follow me and I will teach you spear skills. Jian Wushuang looked at Jianghu. Jianghu was extremely emotional. In the next moment, he knelt down immediately and kowtowed to Jian Wushuang respectfully. Greetings to Master. Master? Jian Wushuang shook his head. I did not say that I would take you on as my disciple. However, if you wish to call me Master, by all means do so. Follow me. Jian Wushuang brought 8-year-old Jianghu with him and headed to the deepest part of the forest. From that day on, Jian Wushuang started to teach Jianghu wholeheartedly. Although he had lost his abilities, he had knowledge and experience that no one in the Mystery Land had. Not to mention that Jianghu, who he was currently teaching, was only an 8-year-old child. Even if it were those martial artists who stood at the top in this world and were equal to the eternal chaotic world's doctrine masters and heaven masters, Jian Wushuang could still teach them effectively. Time passed by and 10 years passed in a flash. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.